Introducing you to the big men on campus who will be the fantasy football stars of tomorrow. This is the FSGA College Fantasy Football Draft on Bettor Sports Network. It's the kickoff event of college football season, featuring the top college football analysts in the country. Hosted by Campus to Canton's Austin Nace, Chris Moxley, and Matt Bruening.
Welcome to the first ever FSGA College Fantasy Football Tournament here on Bettor Sports Network. Austin Nace, Chris Moxley, Matt Bruening here from Campus to Canton. We're going to help guide you guys through this draft, talk a little bit about college fantasy, introduce hopefully some new people to it. We're going to have some people on while the draft is going on who are participating to kind of give us an idea of what they've been thinking about as the draft has been going on, and then really just talk about some players, some strategy, and really just, get college fantasy football in front of people's faces that maybe haven't seen it before. So Chris, you're participating in this draft. You are one of the representatives from Campus to Canton. So thanks for joining us here. We're really interested. You're here today to walk us through what you're thinking through all of your picks, which I think will be really informative, not only for us, but for the listeners out there as well.
Yeah, it should be fun. I'm gonna see how I can manage doing both, because we got a quick timer, and I got some sharp folks drafting around me too. So I'm gonna have to stay vigilant. Got some really good minds in this draft that I'm excited to compete with.
Well, Matt, you and I definitely won't give Chris any trouble if he's having trouble juggling this thing, right?
No, I'm better you than me, my friend, because we'd be seeing a lot of Ohio State players going off the board when I got into tough situations. Because just revert to what I know. I'm excited to see what you do, though. You are definitely one of the, in my opinion, brightest minds in the CFF space, including this entire draft group. I mean, 18 of you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how you guys handle this, and with the picks coming fast for everybody too.
Yeah, we want to introduce the league itself, the format, to people who might not be familiar, kind of some of the twists and turns you see on a college redraft league as opposed to an NFL fantasy league. There are a few differences, and we want to introduce all the participants as well. Let's actually do that first, and then we can get into what exactly we can expect to see in terms of number of rounds, the starting requirements, all of those kinds of things. And that draft's going to kick off here right around 4:10, 4:15 Eastern, or about 10 minutes into the show here. We'll get that kicked off. So here is here is the lineup for today. A really, really strong group of competitors. Picking out of the one spot, we've got Jack Breitenbecker and Michael Breitenbecker from Square to Sharp. Pick number 2 is Mike Bainbridge from the CFF site. Pick number 3 is Cam Mellor from Pro Football Network /CFN. Number 4 is John Lobb from Fantrax. Number 5, Thor Nystrom over at Fantasy Pros. Number 6, Joe DeSalvo, also from the CFF site. Eric Froton, the man who is running everything here in this draft behind the scenes, and we'll definitely see him later in this show from NBC Sports. Number 8, Ben Hostler and Travis Waters from DFS Karma. Number 9, Britt Flynn from Fantasy Alarm. Chris, you're in the 10 spot here, sandwiched between some tough pickers. So good luck with that. Number 11, Nicholas Ian Allen, actually somebody who also works with us over at Campus to Canton, picking there. Spot 12 is Scott Bogman from Fantasy Pros. Pick 13 is Steph Smalls from Champions Round. Pick 14 is Joe Goodwin from Fantrax. Pick 15, Jared Palmgren, repping Fantasy Alarm, but he runs our CFF group. So really, if he wins this thing, we're claiming that over at C2C. We're not giving that one to anybody else. Number 16, Mike Renner from Underdog. Pick 17, Mike Breitenbecker and Mason Steffen from Square to Sharp. And then pick 18, bringing it home, is going to be Chris Benzine, RotoWire. So this is a snake draft. So, go through the first round, and then pick 18 will become the first pick in the second round, so on and so forth. As we mentioned, guys, 18 teams, 30 rounds. There is a 2-minute clock. So this thing is going to be moving pretty fast here, at least to start off. Starting with requirements. Unlike NFL fantasy, which is usually either one quarterback, or maybe you see one quarterback in a super flex, 2 QB or more is very, very common in college. There's 133 teams. You can find, 60, 70, 80 quarterbacks that are worth starting, on any given week. So more quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and then 3 flex options there. 10-week regular season. So again, the NFL, there's 17 regular season weeks. We only get 13 in college. So usually 10 weeks for the regular season, 6 playoff teams make it at the end. The top 6, the top 2 get a bye. Touchdowns, passing, rushing, receiving, all 6 points, receiving and rushing yards, as you would in a normal NFL league, 0.1 points per yard. Same with passing yards, 25 yards equals 1 point there. Turnovers of any kind, you lose 2 points, and then all 2-point conversions are worth 2 points as well. So, Chris, without giving too much ammo to your fellow drafters here, you see these kind of starting requirements, these kind of scoring requirements. What's going through your mind early in a college fantasy draft, where maybe in the NFL for years it's been, you get that stud running back early, or this year you're taking Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp, those stud wide receivers, or maybe, Travis Kelce's gotten a lot of love this year as a first-round guy finally. What are you thinking about in this kind of a setup?
Yeah, so this league is 18 teams, right? And so while we talk about how deep quarterback is in general, I mean, there's so many teams that you can get by with production. My expectation is that the first round is going to contain anywhere between 6 and 8 quarterbacks, possibly more. I think you could see up to 12 go, because the high end at that position really is a league winner, game winner, just total opens up for so many other opportunities in your lineup. If you get an elite quarterback, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, I think you're feeling really, really good about yourself. And if you wait on quarterback, I think you could be looking at some dicey weeks, given how deep this league is. So would not surprise me if we have a lot of quarterbacks go in the first 2 rounds, which is not super common in a lot of CFF leagues that I'm in, because it's such a deep position.
And that 6-point passing TD, how much does that raise the floor for a lot of these QBs as well?
Yeah, it takes the weight off of some of the rush-heavy quarterbacks. So a player like John Reese Plumlee, the quarterback at UCF, is he's far more of a rushing guy. You can rely on him for rushing touchdowns. That gives him someone maybe like EJ Warner, who is not a rusher, plays at Temple, a much higher ceiling. And so it gives them kind of a little bit more of a
way to bury the lead. Kurt Warner's kid. I mean, you could throw that out there too.
Yeah. Kurt Warner's kid who plays at Temple. So players who are not big rushers, quarterbacks who are not big rushers definitely get a bump. So you don't have just focus on rushing quarterbacks, even though there's one that will end up going early.
Matt, I know you and I don't play a ton of pure CFF. We play some formats that kind of tie in college fantasy, specifically Campus to Canton leagues, hence the name of our website, the name of the show, all of those things. What would you be thinking about early with 18 teams, keeping in mind that obviously if a position has a shortage, they can run out quickly here? What positions are you probably thinking you want to target early, just so you don't miss out on some of those top guys at thin positions?
I mean, this is probably going to be music to Chris Moxley's ear, but I'd probably be looking to get a tight end fairly early on. The one similarity I think you can talk about on the college and the NFL side is just the shallowness of that position. It's the same in the NFL as the same as CFF. The top guys are going to help win you weeks, and there's not a lot of them. Chris is definitely more apt when it comes to the tight end position, but I would say there's probably 10, maybe 12 guys that you really want to bank on. And I feel like
I was going to say 3.
Too big a number. Okay. I was trying to stretch a little bit. So even if you want to say 5, like there's not a lot of those guys. So if you're talking an 18-team league, if you don't get one of those guys, I almost think you do what you do in an NFL draft. You just punt tight end at that point, and you're just whatever. I'm trying to load up on quarterbacks, wide receiver, running backs. The other one is quarterback. Chris mentioned it. 18 teams. There's a lot of those guys at the top end. And I think another big difference for college and the NFL is there's a lot more guys on the college side that can win you games just based on their rushing alone and don't bring you a ton of passing, where you don't see a lot of that on the NFL side. But I'd want to get one of those stud guys, because it's not PPR. So these running backs who catch passes or wide receivers like a Malachi Corley who may get a ton of volume, him getting 130 catches isn't going to help you because you're not getting those reception points. So I would be attacking personally quarterback and tight end early on in this draft and try and get those studs.
It's half PPR.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So it's,
I
but
missed
it's,
that part, so
but
still matters.
it still matters a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
A reminder to anybody who is watching and wants to follow along, you can follow all of the picks and see the full team rosters on Twitter at Bettor Network. So go ahead, check that out. If you want to see the picks live as they are happening, get a feel for how a draft like this should go. So say you're somebody who's watching this show, you're inspired, you want to go start your own CFF league. Very normal to draft this time of year, especially with fall camp starting up, much like the NFL. This is a prime portion of the year to draft. You're going to see today, this is the entire FBS. So all of the teams that make up, 100 and is it 35 or 33 now? We added 2 more this offseason, Sam Houston State and Jacksonville. It's 133.
33.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jacksonville State. So you can play like that, which is what's going to be here today. So any player from any of those 133 teams is available. If you've got just a couple buddies and you guys want to give it a try, dip your toes in, you can on Fantrax, which is the platform that we're going to be drafting on today, limit the player pool to certain conferences. And usually what people do is Power 5 only versus Group of 5 only. Power 5 is the Pac-12, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12. So all of those programs that you probably see more of on TV, you're probably more familiar with. If you're a draftnik at all, you probably recognize a lot of these names a little bit more. You can do that, and that is actually a fairly common setting as well. But yeah, you guys have all of college football here today. So Chris, what does that open up possibility wise? I mean, some of these G5 schools for people, the uninitiated, there's points to be had at a lot of these schools.
Yeah, there absolutely are. And it's, I say this on our show that we have during the season that not a lot of time is spent there. So I think there are betting edges to be gained, especially when we talk about totals and spreads. But like some of these players just go so under the radar, even though they have 100, 110 target upside or 200 carry upside. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for people who are really in the weeds on some of this stuff. So like there's a player or two from Jacksonville State or Sam Houston that I have in my queue. And those are the teams who just entered the FBS this year. So I think it pays to do that level of research. And, there's a lot of resources that are available. A lot of the people in this draft have some of those resources. So really, really pays to do your homework.
We'll probably see a bunch of them go today because a lot of people in this draft know what they're doing. So Mox is not going to get any steals, I don't think, in this one.
No, especially picking where he is in the middle there amongst some of the sharps there.
We're gonna have to make sure that like you're muting your mic when Nick is picking right next to you because I feel like you two are gonna be sniping. I can just see Mox get mad right now as Nick snipes him on multiple picks on the way back around.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun battle in the middle here. We are going to be joined here by our first guest shortly in about 10 minutes, Eric Froton, as we said, the man, the myth, the legend, running this whole operation for us at NBC Sports. He's going to join us at 4:20 p.m. here Eastern to hype the league up a little bit. We might have his first selection in by then to hear from him. We're also going to have John Lobb about 20 minutes after him, Britt Flynn at the top of the hour, and then Dan Servididio at 5:20. So we've got some guests lined up. We will see more as we get into the draft and we start getting some selections made. The draft's scheduled to kick off here in, I don't think, less than a minute now at this point, right? We've got a 4:15 start time here. Matt, let's try to predict who Chris wants to take here with his first pick. Let's really blow up Chris's spot before we get going.
All right. So he's sitting at the 6 spot. You think? No, I'm sorry. You're sitting at the 10 spot. Oh, this is not good. How many quarterbacks we think are going before it gets to you?
6.
Yeah, I was going to guess 5 or 6.
6. You know what? I'm just going to speak this into existence because I want this to happen for you. And I don't know that it will. But I want you to take Brock Bowers at 10. I think he's going to make it to you. The question will be do you stand? You are all about taking these tight ends and freshmen. I don't imagine you're taking a lot of freshmen today because it's not a dynasty draft. Will Chris Moxley be who he really is and take Brock Bowers at 1? There's first pick at the 10 spot if he falls to him.
Do you want me to answer that now, or would you like to keep the suspense
Yeah,
going?
absolutely. No, let us know.
I doubt it.
You're a fraud.
Yeah.
You're a fraud.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right. Man, well, the draft has kicked off here, guys, and we've got 4 selections already. So let's hit on them really quickly, and we are going to try to keep up with as many of them as we can here. So we've got Caleb Williams, quarterback at USC, went first. No surprise there, the reigning Heisman winner, and was very productive for fantasy purposes last year. Picked back at Western Kentucky. That is an extremely prolific offense that we're going to hear talked about a lot today as the show goes on. The wide receivers there specifically are very, very valuable. We got Jordan Travis at pick 3, which is very, very interesting. Florida State, a bit of a trendy ACC championship playoff type team. So Travis would certainly need to have a good year to do that. Bo Nix coming in at 4, quarterback from Oregon. So we started off with 4 quarterbacks. Before we touch on the follow-up guys here, I was going to say pretty chalky, but no, Travis is definitely not a chalky early CFF pick here. So we're already seeing a bit of a pivot from what at least in my experience, I've typically been seeing this offseason. Surprise you guys as well?
Yeah, I think I would have definitely gone Penix there. I mean, Florida State looks like an offense that could be very good this year. We expect them to be a team that challenges for the playoffs. I know Chris Moxley and myself have both said that we think they could be a sneaky playoff team, but I mean, I would definitely take Kalen DeBoer in that Washington offense over Mike Norvell and Jordan Travis personally, just with the volume of passing that Michael Penix is likely to have this year.
Chris Moxley is on the clock, so we're going to test this here because, okay, and you did not take the tight end. Chris took Michael Penix.
That's a good pick, though. That's a good pick, though.
All right.
Wait, we can't knock that. It's a good pick.
What were you thinking here, Chris?
Yeah, this player won't make it around to me, so I can tell you who I was deciding between. It was Penix or Quinshon Judkins for me. I think Judkins should probably go next, or the next 2 picks, but I like Penix, and usually I'm drafting Frank Harris
running back.
Sorry. And there we go.
Ole Miss
running back.
Nicholas
Ian.
Yes.
With great pick.
And I like Penix a lot, but I've drafted Frank Harris over him. But like we talked about at the top of the show, this 6 point per passing touchdown gives Penix, he threw for 35, 34 touchdowns last year. I could see him doing the same thing again.
Yeah, definitely a boost for some of these pocket passers. We're getting some position guys here too. So Marvin Harrison Jr. went 5th to Thor Nystrom. Yes, he is the son of Marvin Harrison, the leading returning receiver in college football. Rasheen Ali right behind him. He sat out last year with an injury, but was incredibly productive the year before, and his replacement last year was incredibly productive. So we expect to see more of the same from him. We got Austin Reed, that quarterback, went 2nd overall from Western Kentucky. His top target, Malachi Corley, went to Eric Froton there, pick 7. And we're going to talk about him, I'm sure, a ton as we continue on here. But 100 catch upside, 12 to 1,500 yard upside here, double-digit touchdown upside, in an offense that loves to throw the ball, high volume. They threw almost 700 times last year, if I remember correctly. So this is a team that has a ton of volume, and Corley is their top option. So big there for him. Some other names that have gone here in the first round: Drake May, the UNC quarterback, getting some top 5 NFL draft buzz for next year. Raheem Sanders went to Britt Flynn. She's an Arkansas fan, so that actually is a perfect marriage of draft spot and talent there. Emeka Egbuka, the 2nd Ohio State wide receiver. We're going to talk about some systems here shortly. Egbuka and Marvin Harrison, 2 wide receivers from the same team. This would be like, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins going in the first round of a draft. Don't see it a ton in the NFL, but we certainly see it in college, and we're going to see a bunch of it here early. Torrey Horton, Colorado State target hog there. That Frank Harris, you debated between him, Chris. You said you've picked him in some other spots. He went in the first round here. Our first tight end, Aronde Gadsden, followed up by Bowers, the top 2 tight ends. Those guys stand pretty head and shoulders above the rest of the field. We've got Jaden Daniels, the QB from LSU. And now we are going to round out this first round with this final pick. Matt, any other names here really stand out to you besides, Jordan Travis, who we already talked about there?
No, I mean, it seems fairly chalky to me. Like we talked earlier about the quarterbacks, I probably would have taken, Michael Penix and May over Marvin Harrison and Ali, although I do expect Ali to be really good this year. Same with Marvin Harrison Jr. But it seems like a fairly chalky first round to me. I like most of the picks.
And what did we say about eight quarterbacks potentially in the first round? And what do we have? 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 right now. So we were pretty spot on with that. Chris, any surprises here for you?
I think it's interesting that Aronde Gadsden went above Brock Bowers.
All right. Well, that was Jared, so we actually don't want to claim him anymore now. Apparently, he's a blunder early. No.
He must have missed.
Pretty reasonable, though, right?
Reasonable.
Jared,
the Georgia
absolutely.
fan, takes Gadsden.
Yeah, I mean, it's a top tier of 2, and either one I've seen go in both drafts.
All right, and we just got our final name in here, the first round. Another quarterback, Joe Milton, the Tennessee quarterback. As we saw last year with Hendon Hooker, this offense makes pretty much any quarterback look good. And followed that up with Blake Corum, the running back at Michigan. So fairly chalky overall. So we actually do have Eric Froton hanging out here, and he's ready to come on. So let's turn over to him. Eric, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining us here today, and thanks for running this whole thing, getting it up and running so we can have a chance to chat.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me? Is my voice all right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
great.
good.
You'll look great.
I mean, I had problems
great.
with the Zoom call. For some reason, my mic doesn't want to pick up when it comes to Zoom. So I'm glad I can be on here with you guys and converse. Thank you so much for hosting, boys. And screw you, Moxley. I'm going to beat you.
There we go. The first trash talk of the show here. This is great. I was
Eric, hoping Moxley would grace us with the shirt that I deemed to be a scruffy stained glass window from your last the last show that you guys had. I believe it was at the QB show. I think it was. I forget which one you guys.
I was close because I knew you were coming on in the first hour.
I knew you wanted that. Oh, I love your wardrobe, Mox. Love it always.
Yeah, Matt or Chris, the man with the Hawaiian shirt collection. I want to see your closet sometime. I'm coming down there just to look and see what it looks like. Eric, I want to just ask you. You've been playing CFF as long as pretty much anybody. Not to date you here. Just to have the FSGA finally putting on a college fantasy draft here, and that's huge for the format and those that enjoy playing.
Absolutely pivotal. I was there at the winter conference this year, and that was quite an affair. You have 300-400 of the most influential people in the industry, both fantasy and gaming. It's a big spot. There's a lot of people going. Pro leagues. 3 different divisions of pro football, 3 different divisions with relegation of baseball, of basketball, of betting. All these different realms were represented, and we didn't have college fantasy football. So when I saw that, I said, "Oh, I gotta whip them up and make this happen." And I'm glad I did, because here we are. So excited. Thanks, guys.
So thank you. And you found 18 people willing to take the jump here too. So that's great. Any thoughts on how this draft is shaken out so far, or any thoughts on your first round selection there? You went with Malachi Corley. I mean, that's a nice slam dunk pick.
Yeah, it's as late as I've seen him go, but in regular drafts. But hey, this is 18 teams. This is not a standard 12, 14 person draft. This is a big, pool, which is why we're seeing a lot of the QBs going. Just had Leonard. Who did Steffi take here? Who was that? M. Reed? Texas A&M. Who's that person? I think we may have a
Marcel Reed.
Marcel Reed.
Yeah, it's a true freshman.
Okay, well that's a bold pick. I think she might have met Addison Reed. Who knows? But that being said, Braylon Allen. This has been a pretty good set of picks. Donovan Smith by Mike Renner, I think, was a little bit off the board here, but dude, that's what happens. Everybody's looking to get their lockdown number 1 QB. And you got to get him quick because, there's currently, 11 off the board within the first, round and a half. That's not what you're going to usually see in a standard CFF league.
Yeah, pretty much all these top guys on the Fantrax rankings, and then pretty close to all the top guys on our rankings at Campus to Canton as well. Eric, I don't want you to give away too much of your strategy here. The competition might be listening.
Or you can.
What are you thinking about here? It's your next pick. Chris is actually about to pick here as well.
Sure. Where I went Malachi Corley, got that lockdown number 1 wide receiver to go, establish that particular position group. I'm going to go definitely away from that now. be it quarterbacks. I mean, Tyler Shuck being named the starter at Texas Tech in a 6-point per passing touchdown league is enticing if he gets to me at 7. I'm not going to lie to you. Could kick around Kyle McCord, Matt's boy. Definitely in play. I'll definitely be looking at a QB. Or I do have a couple of running backs that I would consider as well. Specifically, I love Damian Martinez over there at Oregon State. I think he's going to have a big year, as I think Trey Benson will too. And I know you guys don't like Trey Benson as much as I do over there at C2C, ranking them, in the 19 range in terms of running backs. I have him as the number 10. All right. I believe in Trey Benson. The 4 yards after contact, the missed tackles, 40%, missed tackle rate. I just thought when he got the rock, when Trayshawn Ward went down in the second half of the season, you saw those final 6 games where Trey Benson absolutely went nuclear. I think we're going to see him pick up right where he left off. I think that's a big, that's certainly somebody I'll be kicking around. And I like his over 950.5 rushing yards. Moxley, how do you feel about that, buddy? Was that, I know you're a props guy too.
Yeah, of course. I think it's simpatico on this. I think we're both on the over. It was too low. You getting rid of Trayshawn Ward. Lawrence Toafili is a what, like a third down back at best.
Skinny change of pace.
He's not stealing touches.
No, he isn't.
I'm all in.
Same team. So I would say that's the fearsome foursome that we'll be looking at, in terms of who we'll be trying to acquire. It'd be either Martinez, Benson, or if I'm feeling lucky, Tyler Shucky.
I wouldn't be feeling lucky right now. When you said that name, Chris Moxley's face told me he's probably taking Tyler with his next pick.
Yeah, probably not take. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. Oh, really, Mox? Okay, well, I appreciate the heads up at least, Moxley.
Well, yeah, now that I have inside information.
Oh, it is true. Well, I gave a blend. I've got options out there. Round 2, I think I'll be okay finding it.
Well, he really meant he's going Kyle McCord, Chris. That's what he's really doing. It's Kyle. He's taking Kyle. So if you really want to snipe him, that's who you need to take with your next pick.
Well, we appreciate you coming on here and being honest and vulnerable.
That's right. Hey, man, I'm here for the people. I put this league together so that everybody can play college fantasy football and be interested by the greatest fantasy sport known to mankind, in my opinion.
Well, Chris on pre-show said he was taking Spencer Rattler first. So, I mean, there's already a lot of subterfuge going on here. So yes, thank you for your honesty.
Absolutely. Well,
much appreciated.
Hey, we have the C2C back-to-backs here with Nick Ian Allen and Chris Moxley. We have a little bit of a war. There's a little inside C2C battling going on here. Who do you think Nick is going to take? Oh, geez, the draft is paused.
Yeah, okay. I heard the draft froze, so we do have some small.
All right, let me see here. I guess Steph. Steph Smalls. We're trying to figure out what's going on with Steph because Marcel Reed was taken. So should we run it back? Because I think we were trying to find out. Well, guys, let me see. I should probably figure this out.
Well, we can let you go then. Yeah, go run your league, Eric. Yeah, that's the joys of being a commissioner, right?
We're getting live.
All right, we're gonna
live commissioning.
There we go. For the people out there, that is what commissioning is like in every league, no matter what type of format it is.
It's a thankless
100%.
job. Thankless job.
It is,
and that's why I never want to be commissioner in any of my leagues.
That's why we pay someone to run our leagues for us. Yes. All right. So it looks like we did make a small. No, we have not made the change yet, but we can look at some of these other picks while we're waiting. See what's going on here. Eric brought up Donovan Smith there as an interesting pick by Mike Renner. We know somebody who has Donovan Smith is potentially just based on the system, which college football is really all about, these systems, as potentially the top overall quarterback in this year's group for fantasy purposes. He's a transfer, came over from Texas Tech last year. Dana Holgerson, their head coach, has generally had quarterbacks produce at a really, really good clip. They've had Clayton Tune there the past couple years. They have a very good receiver room led by Matthew Golden, presumptively. So, I mean, Smith, and he's very, very mobile. This is a guy, 6-point passing touchdowns, maybe takes away a little bit of his edge as a rusher, but he's a guy that could have a QB1 ceiling here this year, right?
I mean, I think so.
All right. Well, it looks like the draft is back up and running, and we've got Braylon Allen, Jalen McMillan, Riley Leonard. All right. So it looks like we've got things back on track here. All right. So KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas QB, Tyler Shuck. Oh, one pick before you, Chris.
Nick's already getting on Chris's nerves.
I know Nick super well, and I knew that was going to be his pick. He's been taking Shuck in second round of 12-team drafts, so I figured it was probably going to come here. I mean, there's a lot of nice value on the board, but I think I'm going to go a little off the board here.
Okay.
And at a position that I think is quickly thinning out, I'm going to go Daquan Finn, quarterback out of Toledo.
Okay.
I like
little early for him.
I thought you were going to go JT Sanders.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to go tight end. JT
I really
Sanders.
thought you were going tight end as well.
Yeah, I think Sanders. I do really like Sanders, but I think I'm going to end up waiting on tight end, and I have a couple guys that are pretty deep in my queue that I think I can get at a value later on.
Yeah. So we are halfway through the second round of the 2023 NCAA FSGA draft. Again, you can find all these picks on Twitter at Bettor Network as they are coming in here. Tyler Shuck, I think it's worth just touching on him again here. We're going to use the word systems during the show about 5,000 times. We talk about it all the time on the Campus to Canton show on Friday nights here on the network every Friday, 7 p.m. It is all about the system for a large portion of these guys. You can be a very painfully average player and produce very, very well if you're in a plus system. The offensive coordinator at Texas Tech is the same guy who used to run this Western Kentucky offense that we were raving about in the first round with quarterback Austin Reed, wide receiver Malachi Corley. So Shuck does have that kind of upside to have an Austin Reed type of year. Do you think he can achieve that this year, Matt? Is that lofty?
I mean, I do think it's lofty, but I don't know about QB1 overall that I know some people believe that he can do, but I would not be surprised if he ends up being a QB1. I mean, we saw him play fairly well at Texas Tech. Donovan Smith played well at Texas Tech at one point in time when he came in there and played, right? So going over here to Houston, I think he's going to be a very good quarterback for them. He's got, as you mentioned earlier, the rushing upside, should pass for a decent amount of touchdowns, has a really good wide receiver, Matthew Golden, that we all like as well, so it should be his top target. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback for you in CFF this year. And I don't know about QB1 overall. Our boy Chris K thinks so, I believe, but I do think he can finish at least top 12.
How about Tyler Shuck? You think he's got QB1?
Mike, that's probably who you asked me about, huh? I just talked about Donovan Smith.
I tried to keep it professional on the response.
The biggest thing with him is the injuries, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing that's kind of held him back. I mean, you go back into the time machine. When Tyler Shuck was at Oregon, there was a lot of talks about him even being an NFL draft guy because of the arm strength and his ability to make plays out of structure and off platform. If he can stay healthy, I do think the same thing as Donovan Smith. He will probably be a top 12 guy just based on that system. And you mentioned what he was able to do at Western Kentucky, where for those NFL fans, Bailey Zappi, who ended up breaking Joe Burrow's record for most touchdowns and yards thrown in college football. I mean, that is the system. He's brought it over now to Texas Tech. They also have very good wide receivers, Jared Bradley. We'll see if Miles Price maybe can take that step forward. We thought he was going to last year as that slot wide receiver. Regardless, should be a very good offense in a conference that historically does not have very good defenses.
I think that's going to hold true again this year with the current makeup of of Conference USA. We have another wide receiver pairing. We actually have two pairs of teammates here that have gone following those Ohio State guys. We have Roma Odunze and Jalen McMillan. They're both at Washington, and their quarterback is gone. Yeah. Systems, folks. Systems. Jalen McMillan, Roma Odunze. Odunze is more of your typical bigger boundary guy. Jalen McMillan, the kind of modern slot, that 5'11", 190, can get open out of the slot there. Both guys that in this offense could go for 1,000 yards this year in the Pac-12. That really wouldn't shock me. And Chris is nodding his head, so I think he feels similarly. And then Pac-12 also, Tet McMillan and Jacob Cowing, who are at Arizona. And they should be the two big guys there. Tet, the tall boundary guy cowing the smaller slot. Chris, do you have any preference on which of those wide receiver duos you like for this year?
Yeah, I think I like the two at Washington, Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan, because I think it's a more narrow target share. I think the offense is just going to pass for more yards in general. I think they're a little bit more higher powered. I prefer their quarterback, Michael Penix, who I drafted at 10 here, to Jane DeLora, who I bet goes in the next 12 picks or so if quarterbacks keep going off pretty quickly. But I like the Arizona duo a lot as well. That's the earliest I've seen Ted McMillan go, and I had him in my queue like pretty close to that spot. So I kind of like what Froton is doing at that spot with Corley and McMillan back to back.
Yeah, a pair of wide receivers, and he intimated he did not want to go wide receiver, so he must have gotten sniped a little bit here on the way back around. One thing I think, because we talked about with the scoring, we're not seeing a lot of running backs going off the board earlier, but I think there's also a lot of really good running backs left college football last year. And if you look at the list of kind of the top guys, here's Fantrax's top 12. You've got a lot of guys that we really haven't necessarily fully seen it out of them for a whole year yet. This is about the 10 guys that we've seen it from already: Quinshon Judkins, Raheem Sanders, Rasheen Ali, Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. I mean, all these guys really, except for Kavorian Barnes, have definitely done it before for a whole year. But after that, it thins out. So I do think we're seeing a little bit of an impact of that. And we just saw Jaquindon Jackson go off the board, which is really surprising to me. Utah, their system for running backs generally produces very, very productive players. So Jaquindon Jackson, former quarterback, now running back, 6'2", 230. He's a big guy, big athletic guy. And that's an interesting selection there to pair up with Austin Reed for Mike Bainbridge, who is a guy that definitely knows what he's doing there. Jackson, you made a face, Matt. I mean, that surprised you.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to go this early. I mean, probably goes in the third, maybe fourth round. I guess you're betting a lot on that Utah running, as you mentioned, the system with what Kyle Whittingham has been able to do with running backs, that he just comes out there and dominates. I mean, obviously, there's rumors that Cam Rising, the quarterback for Utah, will not be available to start the season. So maybe they just lean heavily on Jackson. I mean, he's extremely incredible. I mean, he's an incredible athlete. As you mentioned, he was a quarterback, shifted to running back last year, got in a couple of games for Utah and looked fairly impressive. But you mentioned, we haven't seen it from some of these guys. Jackson's one of them. We haven't seen him play a ton of running back. That's to me, a little bit of a surprising pick with some of the other running backs still on the board to take him there. But I mean, I don't hate it.
And I do wonder, I mean, it's Mike. I'm not questioning Mike here at all. If he has the projectable ceiling that Kavorian Barnes does, who went a pick after him at UTSA. Barnes stepped in for the final 5-6 games last year. This is a system that's been pretty good. They had Sincere McCormick there before him. That might be a name that folks remember. He is now nominally in the NFL, but was very productive in college. And Barnes, another strong system there for him. So that is surprising a little bit there. Chris, any surprises there in that second round? A couple of the names that we didn't really shout out: John Reese Plumlee, the UCF QB, went in there. Sia Bangura, the Ohio running back. Travion Henderson at Ohio State, running back there. And then Joshua Cephas, UTSA wide receiver.
I think we're going to have John on in a minute, so I'd like to ask him what he was thinking with the Henderson pick. That's earlier than he usually goes in drafts, and so I'd like to pick his brain on that one a little bit, because I had a couple more running backs above him, but now you're just seeing the guys who, those workhorse types start to go, and I think that there were going to be like 9 who went right after I picked Daquan Finn. I may have changed my mind a little bit on that Finn pick. But, there's still 3 guys I really like in my queue. So, but yeah, I mean, you're seeing a massive running back run right now.
Yeah. Well, you said we're bringing him on in a minute. Let's bring John on. John, Mr. Lobb at Gridiron Skull 91 on Twitter. You're repping Fantrax here today. John, how's it going, man? Thank you for hopping on here to discuss your draft so far. Chris was just asking, why did you take Travion Henderson here in the second round? So go ahead, tell us why you wanted him here this early.
The one thing that I've noticed over the years, in 15 years playing college fantasy football, is name recognition. I don't know everyone in this draft. I think he's in the same tier as everyone else: Marquez Cooper, Trey Benson, Javorian Jackson. And in my opinion, since I didn't know those three teams after, I know Mike Bainbridge would not have taken them, but the other two guys I did not know. And I was expecting a running back run. I also know people are not as high on Will Shipley as I am. So I knew I was going to get Will Shipley in the third round. So by kind of thinking about outside the box how people are going to draft by name recognition, I'm going to take Henderson there because I'm all in. I think he's going to rise up to the first or second best running back in the draft. I think when you have a challenge at the running back position, you go old school and give the ball to your goddamn running back who's an All-American. He's healthy. He's fine. He's going to be a stud. We're going to see what he did freshman year. So I'll take Henderson there, even though I might have him ranked a little lower.
John. I love it.
I mean, if you don't like Kyle McCord and the other, aren't you going to give it to Henderson?
Well, let's
all right, and then Shipley with your third pick. I mean, that's a guy, new offensive coordinator coming into Clemson. We've been talking a lot about systems here as we've been working our way through the draft. A new offensive system should be much more explosive, a higher scoring offense. Shipley, a major benefactor of that switch there.
I'm a believer in Garrett Riley. I mean, look at what he did with Max Duggan. Guys, Max Duggan, may I repeat it again? Max Duggan was a Heisman finalist. Let me say it one more time. Max Duggan was a Heisman finalist. He now has Cade Klubnik. No matter what you think about him, he's a 5-star prospect. He's definitely got college-level dual threat skill ability. I don't know if this is a good or bad. Clemson has 4 starting linemen coming back. Now, we know they didn't play well last year, but you've got to assume that the offensive line should perform a little bit better with a better offensive coordinator with a better scheme. Well, what does that all mean to me? That means they're going to run the ball more. They're going to get more first downs. They were terrible last year. They were just outright terrible last year, Clemson. I've got to assume rational coaching. I still believe in Dabo Swinney. I can't think that his program's completely fallen apart. I'll take Will Shipley there, and I'm going based on the old 49ers system. You're going to throw in the first half, and that's Will Shipley catching the ball, and you pound it in the fourth quarter with Maffa. So if Shipley's getting his 18 touches in the first 3 quarters, I'll take it any day of the week.
We have Shipley as our RB9 at Campus to Canton, and Fantrax has him at 6th overall. So not too far.
And where did he go here? I didn't even look.
Projection.
Like around, I know running backs went late, right?
Right about 10, I think. 1, 2.
Yeah, he went as RB11. You took him as RB11, John.
11.
So I was happy. Yeah,
so
I was happy with that value.
That's great, John. You've been a champion for college fantasy football for longer than probably anybody on the planet. Now that wasn't it.
Hey, John, you're old.
Follow up. It seems like the format's gaining some traction here. Recognition here with the FSGA. What are some changes that you've seen over the past handful of years in the CFF community? Really, just as it has continued to grow.
I am so excited for this year. I can't believe every day I'm on Twitter. Well, X, right? We now call it X. I'm on X right now, and I see major companies are now offering college fantasy football rankings. I mean, I just saw 2 more companies' platforms that are now doing college fantasy football. I've had people, and I'm not going to give names, but I've had 3 DMs in the last 2 weeks of people offering positions. This is like, we were doing really well as a hobby before COVID. Unfortunately, COVID happened and the hobby almost, it wasn't very good. It was just a tough year for the college fantasy football industry. But what I've seen on X and what I've seen the amount of internet sites and the amount of people putting out college fantasy football content, I could never believe that this would have happened 10 years ago. We still need another major site to put out a game platform other than DFS. So there's still hurdles to go, but I see so many companies offering college football rankings. And this FSGA is just amazing to finally get on this organization and get a chance to draft.
Yeah, it really has exploded over the past couple years, in no small part thanks to you, John. So
thank you very much.
We
guys,
tip our hat.
We all do a good part.
You predicted that running back run here, John. Before we let you go, I want to ask you. I mean, you nailed it. We had 6 or 7 in a row here of guys here in the third round. Guys like Marquez Cooper, guys like Trey Benson, Nick Singleton went, the rising sophomore at Penn State. Yeah, that's an interesting one there. LaDamian Webb. Any running back names here on this third round kind of stand out to you? As interesting picks. Our own Chris Moxley actually even took a running back, Samson Evans here.
I like Chris Moxley's pick of Samson Evans. If you haven't played college fantasy football, you've got to know the G5 pool. You got to know that level of player. Samson Evans comes from Iowa. He just really couldn't get on the field at Iowa. Comes to Eastern Michigan. Took him a while to get on the field there too. But, man, he broke out against Arizona State last year. He became a total stud. He's a big back. We know that Eastern Michigan's going to pound the ball between the tackles. We love volume. If you're looking at a guy for volume, Evans should get at least 20 touches a game. I mean, what does Eastern Michigan have? They're going to give the ball to him. And I'll say there's 2 running backs that I think it moved up pretty significantly. When did I start drafting? In March. And I've kind of come on. I also now like them and very interested. Chase McClellan, I know Jared Palmgren. I'll let him speak about it more. He's been talking about him a lot. I started to do my research, started thinking about Nick Saban, started thinking about Alabama. He's loyal to the upperclassmen. Let's just say they have a few challenges at the quarterback position. If you're Nick Saban, what are you going to do? Give it to your 210-pound running back. So I think that's a great pick. And Audric Estime, hey man, they lost 2 backs in the transfer portal at Notre Dame. You have a defensive-minded coach. They've lost Michael Mayer. They got some young guys at wide receiver. They have a quarterback challenge. I don't see how Estime doesn't get 20 carries a game. And I did a little research. In their 4 losses last year, Notre Dame gave the ball to Estime less than 10 times. And they got whacked. When they gave him the ball a bunch of times, guess what? Notre Dame won the football game. I think he's 227 pounds, if my memory serves me, which is at the college level. He's going to hurt some people. I really come around to Audric Estime.
John, I got a question for you. Picking out of the 4 hole here, you started off with a quarterback and 2 running backs. You are now one of 4 teams out of 18 that does not have a receiver of some type, whether it's tight end or wide receiver. Are you worried about the wide receivers coming back around to you now if you're looking on the screen watching the graphic there, I believe there's only 2 of those guys still left as Troy Franklin just came off the board a minute ago. Are you worried about the possible wide receiver depth coming back around to you, and are you planning on attacking that anytime soon?
I wasn't worried because this is my plan. I did want in an 18-team league. So my strategy changed. Now, if a top 10 run quarterback had fallen, I would have gone back-to-back quarterbacks. But it did not happen. So once that did not happen, I said, look, I'm going to go back-to-back running back. I want 2 solid running backs in this format. We're playing 2 matchups each week, and it's a long season. I got to get my studs in the running back. I love the middle round of the wide receivers. I'm very comfortable drafting wide receivers who I have ranked 15 to 35, 15 to 40. I'll grab 2 or 3 of them there and let the chips fall as they may. So I wanted those running backs were really important. I wanted 2 guys who I believe will get 20 touches a game.
All right. Well, John, thank you for hopping on here with us. John Lobb at Gridiron Skull 91 and representing Fantrax here in the FSGA draft. John, good luck to you in this draft and good luck to you. We'll be chatting with you a ton over the course of the college football season. I have no doubt about that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great to see all of you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Later, John.
All right. So we've had a bunch of picks. We covered a lot of them here. And John did as he talked about the running back position. One name I just want to highlight that actually just went off the board, DeCorian Clark, the wide receiver from UTSA. We now have all 4 of the big 4 UTSA players off the board. You can see him here. Frank Harris is back for his 7th season of college football. Yes, that is possible, and Frank Harris is doing it. He's a very experienced QB. They got Kavorian Barnes at running back, a system that has produced plenty of good running back play in the past. Last year, they were a 3-headed monster at wide receiver. Joshua Cephas, DeCorian Clark are still there. Zachary Franklin, their top guy, he left. He's now at Ole Miss. There's some question marks here about this offense, though, guys. You would think, returning production, this is great, but Harris, we just found out a couple of days ago, had like 4 surgeries on his knee, thought about quitting football because things were not looking good for him this offseason. Clark tore his ACL at the very end of the season, and then Cephas, I believe there's a DUI on the horizon for him. So, Chris, how do you feel about this UTSA offense? Is there more risk than maybe people are baking in with them for 2023?
Hold on, I have to make my selection.
Wow, Wiggles fell to you. That's crazy. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, so I think there's risk. I'm not really worried about Frank Harris, to be honest. I think that he's just like the entire offense. Rushing the ball, he'll be fine. Passing the ball, he'll be great. So really excited for him. I am not as worried about Cephas. He's already been disciplined by the program. He was held out of their bowl game or their conference championship. I can't remember which one. Because this happened in December. It just got brought back up in the news. Yeah, re-reported. So I think he'll be fine for the most part. DeCorian Clark scares the crap out of me. He only started running routes 3 weeks ago. And we're less than 3.5 weeks to the season.
Yeah.
That's a concern. So, I mean, that I think opens up possibility for second and tertiary options on this offense. I think you'll see some UTSA pass catchers go off the board probably earlier than they would have otherwise. Clark, where he went, is, to be honest, just a little rich for me. Because I would have taken Burgess and I would have taken Wiggles above him. I have both ranked above him.
Let's talk Wiggles. You have Sam Wiggles as your 10th ranked wide receiver right now at campus2canton.com. He's the leading guy at Ohio, former walk-on at Ohio State. Basically was most of the receiving offense last year. And they bring back his quarterback, Curtis Rourke. You did a fist pump. You did a little dance. I don't think I've ever seen you move like that before. So you were excited to get him here.
Apparently. I was. I actually thought that he was going to go 4-2 because Curtis Rourke had gone at the previous selection. And I was like, well, stacking Rourke and Wiggles would be cool. And then he just kept falling, which was awesome. Because I'm just super high on this Ohio offense. I think they could potentially be. I don't want to say the best offense in the G5, but I mean, outside of Western Kentucky, they could be the most prolific. I mean, this team has an awesome offense in a really weak conference, which is the Mid-American. I like Saya Bangora. I like Curtis Rourke. I like Sam Wiggles. I like some of the secondary receivers they have too. It's just a really good offense, and I was kind of hoping that Curtis Rourke would make it back around because I would consider him there as well. That whole offense is going to be really good. And that's a reason to just watch midweek action. They play on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays during the week, and there'll be some really fun Ohio games.
Matt, Carson Steele went off the board here in the 4th round. Yeah. We're looking for a replacement for Zach Charbonnet, the running back, formerly of UCLA. He's now with the Seahawks, went in the 2nd round. We've had a lot of internal debate at Campus to Canton. There's been plenty of speculation online too. Is that Carson Steele who takes his spot? He's a transfer in from Ball State. Or is it Tamarian Harden, the 2nd year back there, who apparently, according to reports, and sometimes it's tough to always get accurate information out of spring practices, Harden looked better than Steele. So Steele coming off the board first. Do you expect Harden to come off the board soon? And does it surprise you that Steele went before him?
I mean, it surprises me that Steele went before him. And I loved Carson Steele, even at Ball State. I talked about him when he was a true freshman. If you guys, again, follow us at campus2canton.com, I posted an article very early on saying this is a guy you need to go get. And he ended up having a massive season for Ball State last year. The problem is, I mean, you're not wrong in that it is kind of hard to know what exactly is going on with these spring reports. But Chip Kelly and UCLA are one of those teams that allows a lot of access, so you get a lot of really good reports coming out of there. And unfortunately, most of the spring reports about Carson Steele were negative. There was not a lot of positive talk about him, whether, it was him unfortunately fumbling the ball, not getting handoffs correctly. It just looked like Tamorian Hardin was the guy all through spring. I find it very hard to believe, especially him already knowing the system, being there last year, when Carson Steele comes over as a trainer to learn this whole new system, for him to now jump Hardin through the summer and into the fall camp. I personally, even though I think Carson Steele is the better player, am taking Hardin over him because I think he's going to be the starter early on, and I really don't think he loses that job unless he gets injured. So it was a little bit surprising to me to see Steele go this early, and I'll be very curious to see when Hardin does go, because I think you're getting the better value at that point.
Yeah, interesting there. We're about to wrap up the fourth round here. Jordan Curley is a couple wide receivers. Jordan Curley from SMU, Elijah Badger at Arizona State, Antoine Wells, your South Carolina Gamecocks there. Chris, we want to get the final word here of this round. Just any thoughts as we're about to wrap up the fourth here? Any surprising names or how are you feeling about your draft or anything like that?
If I knew what I knew in the second round, I probably wouldn't have taken Finn. There's quite a few good quarterbacks here, not without risk, of course, but I think those who wait on quarterbacks are probably going to be kind of happy with what they did. So that's my first look. And then the running back thinned out really, really quick. Like, you're just taking shots at this point. Very, very quick.
Yeah, that run was brutal.
Yeah, it really, really was. So, do you wish you had two running backs at this point, Chris, based on what we know now?
Yeah, I honestly think that I wish I had gone Saya Bangora from Ohio, or Marcus Cooper, potentially, at that Finn spot. But, we'll see. I got time.
Brant Keithy going ahead of JT Sanders was a little surprising to me.
Half the time he does.
Yeah, that is interesting. All right. We are through 4 rounds of the FSGA draft here on Bettor Sports Network. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Britt Flynn from Fantasy Alarm, get her thoughts on her draft so far, some of her Razorbacks coming off the board here early, and then we'll be covering the rest of the draft. So stay tuned. This is Campus to Canton covering the FSGA 2023 College Fantasy Draft here on Bettor Sports.
We're introducing you to the big men on campus who will be the fantasy football stars of tomorrow. This is the FSGA College Fantasy Football Draft on Bettor Sports Network.
What can we expect from you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite, but that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes,
Moose and Keith from Bettor Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition, and I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. He knows what he's doing, but I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside, and now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed, and they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 138 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Hey! Come on! Let's go! Come on, dig it! Yeah!
Keith Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire, over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool. The champ is here. Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush. You were doing the Instagram live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're gonna win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no!
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations. And no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
We're kicking off college football season on Bettor Sports Network. This is the FSGA College Fantasy Football Draft on Bettor Sports Network. Hosted by Campus to Canton, featuring Matt Bruening, Chris Moxley, and Austin Nace.
All right, hour 2 of the FSGA College Fantasy Football Draft, the first ever FSGA College Fantasy Draft, joined by Chris Moxley, Matthew Bruening here. Chris, we're into the 4th round here of this draft. We've talked a little bit about it so far. The running backs are really starting to dry up. You actually just made your 5th round selection. And look at you. You got your tight end.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
JT Sanders.
Gotta stay true to yourself.
Yeah,
Gotta stay true to yourself. Yeah, I project him as tight end 3 now that Aronde Gadsden is officially a tight end at Syracuse. He had a really nice connection with Queen Ewers last year, and he, I think, will be the second tight end drafted actually in the NFL. I think this Texas offense could absolutely explode, and he's going to be a huge part of that if that comes to fruition. And I like getting him in the 5th. I mean, I was considering him even back in the 3rd, and he just kept falling. And I mean, I'm happy to scoop up here. There's just such a difference in having an elite tight end and not having one. And I think that he classifies as elite tight end, especially in an 18-team league. I mean, I think there's 3 other teams who can outscore Sanders on a week-to-week basis. And I have that positional edge every other week. So I feel good about that pick.
I mean, you definitely want to stack, right? Especially on the NFL side and college side. So when are you taking Quinn Ewers? I'm just asking. I need to know. Kyle McCord's already come off the board. I'm a happy man. Now I need to see Quinn Ewers go. When's he going, Mox? I need you to take him.
I think he could go in the next 2 rounds. Oh, well, let's talk.
Okay.
All right. Well, before we get into that, we do have another guest here joining us. We're about to be joined by Britt Flynn from Fantasy Alarm. Britt, at Britt_Flynn on Twitter. Is this your first CFF draft, or have you done this before? This is a good-looking team.
Yeah, no, it's my first one, but I've done college football projections for Fantasy Alarm for the past 2 seasons. This will be my 3rd, and I grew up in Fayetteville, so obviously Rocket Sanders, number 1, right? I am so angry at Scott Bogman for sniping KJ Jefferson from me, because that was my initial strategy coming into this, was just to bang with Rocket and KJ back to back, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But I think I've put together a decent little team here.
You got to rep the hometown squad if you can. Yeah. We were saying right when you took Sanders, that was just a match made in heaven there in the 1st round, and that's it's not like you reached on him. That's exactly where he goes in a lot of these drafts. So you have a big expectations for this Arkansas offense again here in 2023.
I do. It always sucks, to be honest, playing in that SEC West, because it's always such a powerhouse and it's so heartbreaking. But everyone has counted Arkansas out year after year after year. They're actually building a decent team. I think the reason that we lost a lot of the games that we did last season was because of that secondary, not because of the inefficiency of the offense. So I still expect us to put up a ton of points. Might lose some close ones and some heartbreaking ones, but Sanders is obviously going to have a huge role in this offense.
Well, while we have you here, is there a receiver you like at Arkansas? Because I haven't been able to figure this one out yet this offseason. So if you can help me here, that'd be great.
Man, I don't have any idea, to be honest. I wish that I still worked with those offensive linemen at the bars, but I'm just a little old now to work with those guys. Back then, I got all the inside details, but unfortunately, I'm out of the circle now.
Man, oh, that's a bummer. Well, these kind of drafts really force you to make some tough decisions. Have you had some difficult, it got into some picks and kind of been choosing between some guys, and why have you ultimately made some of the decisions, I guess, that you've made? Cade Klubnik, Michael Pratt, Dorian Singer, it looks like your last few selections here.
Yeah, so I was actually trying to decide between Pratt and Brent Quavey because, I mean, obviously his year was cut short last season, but he had 3 touchdowns in 4 games. I mean, this guy is super, super good. And with the tight end positional scarcity, I was really tempted to take him. But since this is a 2 QB league and not just a super flex, I felt that I needed to take Pratt ahead of him. And it honestly just broke my heart. But I think that he's going to be really good. With Dorian Singer, I mean, he's Caleb Williams' guy, right? Like, you're going to the offense with Caleb Williams. You're going to have good stats there. So that was kind of a no-brainer for me. I wish that I had a little bit more running back depth outside of Sanders. But like you guys were saying before I came on, that position dried up so quickly. I'm going to punt the position and just kind of fill out with best available from here on out.
I was going to say you were upset about not getting KJ Jefferson. I feel like you ended up pretty good getting Cade Klubnik and Michael Pratt. I mean, Pratt, I know Moxley's a big fan, as am I. And then Cade Klubnik getting Garrett Riley this offseason. He could have a massive season as well. So it's obviously you want the Arkansas Razorback on your team, but getting those 2 guys is probably not a bad consolation prize.
It's not a bad consolation. I'm just grumpy because I'm wearing the Arkansas hat, guys. How dare you take my guys?
You should have. Did you make that known that beforehand that the flag was yours on those guys?
Yeah, we took a picture. I thought that subliminally I was making my claim with the Arkansas hat before the draft started, but apparently Bogman didn't get the message.
Man, the worst. So, I mean, it's still we're in the 6th round here. We're coming back around here. You said you're punting running back. So you're going to be kind of attacking the wide receiver, tight end positions here, probably coming up, obviously, without knowing exactly who will be there.
Yeah, I think so. I've got a couple of people on my radar. Don't want to read them out loud in case anybody drafting is watching, but
Moxley will take them. I've seen him do it. So
you are right around. You're right next to me. Are we sniping each other? Is this what's happening?
Well, I'm 2 picks ahead of you on this turn, so I'm only 1 pick ahead of you. So feel free. That this is a safe space.
Yeah, sure.
Don't listen to him. He already tried to snipe Froton earlier. Don't do it, Britt. Don't do it.
No, I'm looking at a couple of people. If I get them, I think that I'll be able to make this pick during the segment. If I get them, then I will let you know whether or not I got my guy or not. But right now, I'm staying mum.
We'll make sure we keep you on through then at least. You said this was, you've done some projections and things in the past, but this is your first college fantasy draft. For those that maybe are watching and are thinking, this is crazy. How could I ever do this? How did you prepare for this draft with 18 teams? I mean, this is even a little more extreme than maybe somebody else would try for the first time.
Yeah, 18 teams is crazy. I keep looking at it and I'm like, why are these people going so early? And then I'm like, oh yeah, because it's 18 teams. I looked, at ADP on the site. I looked at some cheat sheets, and honestly, my gut and my bias, a lot of the projections that I've done have been for ACC, SEC, and Pac-12. So I'm in particular partial to these guys, if you can't tell from my draft. That's kind of the order that I'm following right now. But it's college football is so deep that I don't know if 18 teams makes as big of a difference as you think, just hearing it off the cuff. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot of value to be had, and a lot of these college players get hurt. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with running back. I know dealing with the projections last year was maddening because there were so many running back injuries, and it was just switching back and forth to who was going to be the starter. I'm just going to try to play waivers and see how that goes with that position.
You mentioned you did some projections for this year for those conferences. Any players that while you were doing them really stood out to you as looking like they might perform better than maybe you had considered when you sat down to start that exercise?
Yeah, so I haven't done the projections for this year yet, actually.
Okay.
All right, so Bogman literally just took one of the guys in my queue. Again, Bogman, you were making a triple X mark on my shit list, buddy.
Our first rivalry. There we go. Yeah.
Love it.
Just gonna say that's 3 players now through 5 rounds, 6 rounds. Oh, he's not even on the stream. I can't even talk to him in person.
Let's get the producer. Can we get Bogman?
I know. Where is Bogman? We need to hash this out right here on live television. No, I'm actually not sure. I haven't dug in right now,
Gotcha.
but I really do like, this is another guy that Bogman took, the Steele from UCLA. I mean, 1,700 scrimmage yards. I get he wasn't at like a Power 5 school, but 1,700 scrimmage yards and 15 touchdowns. I was really looking at him and filling in for Zach Charbonnet. He's going to be so good in this offense. And again, Bogman, this is why you have marks on my naughty list.
We've talked about that UCLA running back position earlier, and yeah, some big shoes to fill there. All right, it looks like you are up. Chris took Davis Brin, quarterback from Georgia Southern. So the big reveal, we got the drum roll. Where are we going here with your selection?
Yes. So although I did lose Luther Burden, I'm going to take Eurosec from Stanford and fill out my tight end position. Really liked what he did last season. I know that Stanford is kind of up and down and not that great, but let's be real. None of the Pac-12 is really that great. They all have holes. They all have defensive holes specifically. And I think that a big tight end, especially in round 6, like Eurosec is going to pay off quite a bit.
And new offensive or new head coach in there that is known for his offensive know-how as well. So that's great. All right. Well, Britt, thank you for hopping on here and for participating in this draft. Hopefully this is something that sparks a new love of college fantasy for you, and we can have you on some other shows in the future. What else are you working on right now, Britt, before we let you go, just so everyone knows what you're doing? I know you just got a new show, right? On Bettor Sports here, which is great. So congrats there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind couple months. It's really awesome. So I'm on a Bettor Morning on Bettor Sports Network, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. I am on Alarm Fantasy Football. That's typically in between the 1 and 3 p.m. Eastern hour. And then Britt's Fantasy Blitz from 2 p.m. Eastern to 3 p.m. Eastern on Mondays and Fridays, although we are looking to expand it going into the season. And then I've also got Lightning Round. We've got the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide, college football projections, just everything. I don't know when I'm going to sleep.
Well, thank you for giving a couple.
I don't know how you find the time. My goodness.
Seriously. I'm glad we're lucky we got the 10 minutes here. Thank you, Britt, so much. For hopping on here.
Thank you guys for having me. Y'all are awesome.
Thanks, Britt. Enjoy the rest of the draft. All right, Chris, I want to hear about your pick, Davis Brin. This is a really interesting offensive system. Again, there's the magic word. No drinking games, but if there were, might have had a sip there. Davis Brin, quarterback at Georgia Southern. Their head coach is Clay Helton, formerly of USC, an air raid or air raid adjacent disciple. And at least I think only one receiver of theirs has gone off the board so far, right? Derwin Burgess and then him. So that 2 of the big names there have gone.
Yeah. So this is so I'm the first team to draft 3 quarterbacks. But I'm probably not going to draft another quarterback for like 10 rounds. He was the last of the guys that I think I could feel good about projecting in a 6-point per passing touchdown league. Like I think he could legitimately throw 30 plus, throw for like 3,800 yards. So I really like Brin. I just think he was a value there. And, I have Michael Penix and DeQuan Finn at quarterback. So I have to worry a little bit about injuries when we're considering those guys who have struggled with that in the past. So shoring up the quarterback position, I think, was important. I don't think you can win this league without high-end quality quarterback play. So there were a couple players that I was considering there, and none of them have gone off the board. So I feel pretty good about that.
It's crazy to me the gas up that Deontay Thornton has had at Tennessee over the past couple months. He went off the board here he went this round a couple picks ago to Eric Froton, who we had on earlier. This is a 6'3", 6'4" speed demon wide receiver transferred to Tennessee from Oregon this offseason. Tennessee just loves speed. Speed. They can't get enough of it. It's really what they look for at the wide receiver position. I mean, it sounds crazy, but Matt, I mean, is this seems like a pretty solid range for Thornton for a guy that if he steps in as wide receiver 1 or 2 at Tennessee, a team that's prolific passing, that he's in line for a good year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what Jalen Hyatt did last year. Cedric Tillman, had he not gotten injured, I think would have had a really good year as well. So Thornton coming in here, I think is honestly a really good pick and good value. There's a lot of reports. A lot of people obviously really like Squirrel White of this offense and think he's going to be the guy. But if, again, we talked a lot about the spring reports with Carson Steele earlier. If you look at the spring reports, everybody has been hyping up Thornton as the guy in this offense. So if he is going to be the one, you have a chance of getting probably a top 15 wide receiver in this format, especially if he becomes the guy for Joe Milton and the Josh Heupel offense. You talked about systems. That's a system you want to attack. I mean, I think it's a great pick. I have to ask Moxley a question. And I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a bummer. I'm sorry to say this, Moxley. You do know that Davis, Britt, and Michael Penix have the same bye week, right? So
that's fine.
Does that matter to you? Because the one thing, because college, there are some teams that will have 2 bye weeks in a season in college football. So it's a little bit different sometimes than NFL. Does that matter to you that both of those guys have the same bye week?
Not really, because I'm drafting Bryn as like an insurance I'm not planning on like sliding him in for Michael Penix week 9 for a bye week, and that's why I drafted him. However, there are certain bye week teams that I am avoiding. One of those teams, I don't know if I will draft a player from, maybe late, is USC, who has a bye week the week of the championship. Week 13 bye week. So Caleb Williams, the first overall player, is not going to be available for your championship game. That's a concern. That is a bye week that I'm paying a lot of attention to. There are a couple other teams with week 13 byes as well. Louisiana Tech is one. I think Rice might be one. I don't remember the other one, but yeah, there's a couple players that I just don't want to draft, and there's double bye weeks. But if the player is high enough performing, I'm willing to take that risk, and I did that with Sam Wiggles, who was a bye week 5 and 10. So week 13 byes, yes, because if I'm drafting a player in the top 2 rounds, I need them for my final week, I think.
We're going to have a new guest here shortly, but I do want to ask real quick, Chris. We see a couple stacks forming here on different teams. It looks like Nick Ian Allen right behind you there, CFB winning edge. He has Cam Ward at quarterback and DT Sheffield, who many like to be his top receiver this year. I see Preston Stone and Jordan Curley on the same team there with Mike Bainbridge. Those are the only 2 that just a quick scan shows me. But I mean, an interesting strategy. Will you be attempting to grab any of the wide receivers to go along with your quarterbacks? Penix's are mostly gone, or his top 2, but Bryn still has a guy out there, and I don't know who Toledo's top receiver is, so maybe you're looking for that guy too.
Yeah, I might take Juwan Newton, who's their wide receiver, late, but yeah, I actually really wanted to stack Penix with Roma Dunes there, Jalen McMillan, and they just went off before I had a chance. I don't think stacking is as important as in the NFL because there's so many teams. So I think it matters less. I do want to be stacking if I have the opportunity to do so. Not sure how much of that I'll have this draft. I would like to target one of the other options in Georgia Southern's offense potentially late. But yeah, I think the teams that are doing that with quarterback and quarterback wide receiver are smart.
We have, in my opinion, the biggest steal of the draft so far, Tyron Smith going there at the turn, at the 5-6 turn. Yeah, I think I would take him above every wide receiver actually that went the round before him pretty comfortably. Chris is shaking his head. I don't know, what do you guys think of Tyron Smith, Chris? You seem to have the stronger reaction.
No, I like him. I actually think that was a really strong round for wide receivers. Luke McCaffrey, who is the wide receiver one, unquestioned wide receiver one at Rice, was a really nice value by Cam at 5'3". And then Thor got Jamal Banks, who might be the only healthy wide receiver at Wake Forest this year. So there were a couple options. I thought Tyron Smith went in a good spot. I was considering him and JT Sanders at my pick. So definitely a nice little value there.
A bunch of those guys on that undervalued list went off the board in the past round or so. All right, let's get another neutral third-party observer up here with us to look at this draft here. We're joined by Dan Servididio at Dan_Servididio on Twitter. Dan, how's it going, man? Thanks for hopping on here and giving us a few minutes to break down the early portion of this draft.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Appreciate you guys bringing me on here to talk some college football. It's awesome. This draft has been rolling right along, and some interesting picks left and right here. So yeah, thanks for bringing me on.
So I know you do you handle a ton of betting and things like that. Are you a college fantasy guy as well? Have you partaken before?
Yeah, I do one league per year with some of my friends from college, ironically. So that's one league that I do per year. But I'm huge into the DFS college football for sure. That's something I will be writing up for Fantasy Alarm on a weekly basis, all those slates. And then, diving into the college football betting landscape. But the college fantasy football has been something I've been trying to get more into, but it's usually like one league per year with a lot of my guys from college.
I love it. So, I mean, you're an experienced manager. Anything standing out to you so far in this draft? Anybody, having a good or bad draft or a reach or a steal here or what do you like?
Oh, it's interesting to see some of the strategies with since this is a 2-quarterback league. Just which teams don't have a second quarterback yet and kind of relying on their main guy, especially, we saw Caleb Williams go 1 overall, no second quarterback for them yet. And then John Lobb at 4 going with Bo Nix and no second quarterback for him yet. And these are all, top fantasy college quarterbacks this year, but maybe relying too heavily on the number one guy. I like to have a second, a solid second guy. And some of these teams, like I see Britt Flynn having really good pairing of Cade Klubnik and Michael Pratt as their two, main quarterbacks there. Also what the team that has Drake May and John Reese Plumlee as a nice 1-2 punch. Interesting to go 2 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds there. But still, I mean, having those 2 after the first 2 is great. Chris Moxley getting Penix and Daquan Finn as well. I like that, Chris. That's a good call because just having, if you're going to go 2 quarterbacks in the first 2, get 2 really good ones like a Heisman contender in Penix and then Finn, who's just, a stud in the MAC there. So, it's just the quarterback strategies for different teams has been one I've been just kind of keeping an eye on. And then, like a team like Jared Palmgren went, waited and then got Dylan Gabriel. That's a great get for his first quarterback, even though we got him in the 5th round there. So it'll be interesting to see who he gets with his second guy.
Are you a early tight end truther as a strategy, or are you a wait on tight end kind of guy? Because I know Chris drafting here with us, he loves early tight end if he can do it, but I am usually more of the opposite.
Yeah, I am. So this is similar with like regular, fantasy football and NFL. If I can get one of the stud guys, like a Brock Bowers for sure, I want to get him. And I actually thought he might go earlier than 16 overall because he's basically, a wide receiver 1. But if I can get one of the top guys, then I will. And then I think if I don't, then I would rather wait. I do like the value, even in the 6th, 7th round. I like the value of some of these guys. You're a sec for Stanford, even Sanders in the 5th round from Texas. I like that. Scott, I like that pick. Chris, I guess I'm just falling in love with your team here.
Keep going. I'm loving this, man.
That wasn't even intentional. I looked up. I was like, oh, Chris made that pick too. But I think I'd rather wait if I don't get one of those top guys like Brock Bowers, Gadsden. But yeah, I'd probably rather wait. And it looks like some of those teams are waiting here.
So you are a DFS and betting guy more so than college fantasy. Any futures or teams that you really like for this year that you're maybe putting some money on here?
The Pac-12 is one that's really interesting to me, and I just think that the Washington is gonna. I mean, we're all really high on Penix, but I love that they added McMillan with Romeo Duns too, because it's just like having those three. Their defense is a little bit of a question mark, but I do think they'll be a little bit better defensively from last year. That they're gonna just kind of take that step of being, possible playoff contender. We see like last year with TCU. This is kind of like one of those things where we saw TCU break through last year and come out of nowhere to basically out of nowhere to make that playoff run. Where I'm trying to identify some of these teams, and Washington's one of those that I know they've gotten hype, but if they just start stringing together wins and maybe the Pac-12 around them is a little bit worse off, I think Oregon, it might take a little bit step back. I'm a little worried about them, but I think Washington's a team that can, if they're just riding their offense similar to what just TCU just did, I feel like they could be coming out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden we look up and Michael Penix is, right there in the Heisman conversation, and they're, possibly undefeated or just have one loss going into December.
I give you one Heisman pick. What's the name you give me?
I think my feeling is Jordan Travis. I just have a feeling that he's gonna take another step forward. Just having a really good season last year. Overall, I think Florida State's gonna be good. It's basically them and Clemson in that ACC going for the top. But if you're just looking at like the quarterbacks that can take it, Jordan Travis is the one that I think can kind of emerge once we get to the later season. Everyone is realizing that Florida State is going to be a top tier team, and their offense can be a big part of that with Travis doing his thing. Jordan Travis would be the one name I like. Definitely kind of staying away from Caleb Williams doing that for a second time.
So you like the Jordan Travis? He went 3rd overall in this draft, and that surprise. That was our first surprise of the draft. You like that pick, though? I mean, obviously, if he has that Heisman upside.
Yeah, I realized that in a draft like this, or another, in other drafts, or if you're making betting picks, DFS, if you just want to take a stand on guys, and it seems like Cam has done that with Jordan Travis at number 3. If you take a stand and if you're really high on him, knowing he's definitely not getting back to you back around in the second round, if you want to just lock him in at that number 3 spot, then I don't mind it. I thought, I like Travis over Bo Nix, honestly, for this year. And if you're talking like Heisman odds and all that, but I just think in general for this fantasy format, Travis over Drake May is also surprising over Penix, but I think if you just have a stand and you like Travis, to take him that early because he's not getting back to you, as I mentioned. And if you kind of have, you're wishy-washy on some of these other top guys like a Drake May or Michael Penix, then, people have different opinions than everyone. And someone else might also be really high on Travis. So he's not going to last to you.
Yeah. Expecting them to make it another 30 picks or so. Probably a tough one there. Well, before we let you go, Dan, what is your, content-wise leading up to the season here? What should we expect from you in the next few weeks? And then during the season, what kind of things do you work on?
Yeah, well, right now I'm doing the Bettor Sports Betting Show on Bettor Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm YouTubes and all that. Doing that 4:00 Eastern every day on a live, talking through. Right now it's mostly baseball bets, daily picks and all that. But we've had people on and talk through some futures odds for the Women's World Cup, the WNBA we touched on, the NBA futures odds, NFL futures, college football, everything. Right now we're doing a lot of baseball stuff, but coming up, for this next month, we'll be grinding right towards college. I'll be throwing out some college picks on there, win totals and all that good stuff, but also some NFL. So we'll be diving into that. So mostly, it's me and Howard Bender, John and Pemba, James Grande, all co-hosting on that. And then at Fantasy Alarm, I do write up some, player props and betting picks for baseball right now. But once college football season starts, I'll be fully into, giving out betting picks, giving out college DFS, college football DFS, and, right into college basketball season too. I'm full into that. So, I'll be ready over this next month to kind of help everyone out at Fantasy Alarm or Bettor Sports Network with the whole college landscape, whether it's betting, DFS, and all that good stuff.
A man of just many talents. All right. Well, Dan, thank you for hopping on here with us. We'll have to talk to you again sometime during the season, have you on one of the shows and pick your brain again. But yeah, thanks for joining us here this year, and good luck with everything in the lead up to the season.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate bringing me on, and yeah, good to talk anytime you guys want.
For sure. All right. I just want to go right to you guys here. We've got most teams have a tight end now. Is kind of the twist that has happened since we kind of looked at the board here. What do we have? Brady Hunt over at Ball State. We see Jaheim Bell at Florida State, Bryson Nesbitt at North Carolina, even Luke Lachey, who, yes, actually is related to Nick Lachey, for those the two people listening that actually thought about that as I said it. Lots of tight ends off the board here. Matt, any of these guys stand out to you guys that you like for this year?
I mean, I like Nick getting Bryson Nesbitt there in the 8th round. I think he's got a shot. Obviously, we expect Devontae Walker to be the guy in this North Carolina offense, but we just saw how well he played last year. First year really in that offense and with Drake May. Now he's got a second year with him. I think Drake May is going to be fantastic. I know some people are worried about the change in the offensive coordinator to Chip Lindsey, but I still think because of just how talented Bryson Nesbitt is, he's going to be a very good tight end. For that to be his second tight end as well, he got Jalen Conyers a couple picks ahead of that, who glowing spring reports, everybody thinks he has a chance to really dominate out there at Arizona State. I think that's a really good tight end room for him. Not surprising as brilliant of a mind that he is, but I thought he nailed it with those 2 picks personally.
Yeah, Chris, you just took 2 running backs. We had talked to you. You hadn't really tapped into the running backs too much yet. You took Jermaine Brown Jr., who's at UAB, and then you took Aiden Robbins at BYU. Tell me a little bit about those 2 guys, why you took them, what you expect from them this year.
Yeah, Brown stepping into the role vacated by Dwayne McBride, who's at Minnesota's fall camp right now. Or fall camp. What do they call it in football? In the NFL? Training camp?
Training camp. Yeah.
You can tell how we're all college now. Yeah, the NFL stuff's just...
I've always felt that Brown's a really talented player. He's involved in both phases of the game. I think he's only like 1,100 or 1,200 yards away from UAB's all-time all scrimmage yard leader. And he is a player who is kind of my first investment in the kick return aspect of scoring. He returns a lot of kicks. He had like over 400 return yards last year. So even if he's on the smaller side, which is like 195, I still like that option and they're going to use him in that role because he's been their returner for almost 3 straight years on kickoff. So I'm dipping in a little bit to that return yard portion of the scoring format.
And then Robbins, he's a transfer. He came in. I think he's transferred twice at this point in his career. But yeah. BYU does tend to have a guy if they can find one. They couldn't find it last year, so Robbins maybe fixes a problem for them.
I think so. I was a little surprised he was still available, just because I think some people are higher on him than me. But that's fine with me. Yeah, he was named to the Maxwell watch list, which is just like the best player in college football. And he was only one of 2 BYU players. Now I got like 2 abbreviation schools back to back. I'm going to mess them up every time. Only one of 2, him and Keaton Slovis. I think they expect him to have a huge role this year. And he was pretty good at UNLV considering what that offense was. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about what Robbins can do. I'm a little worried about the quality of offensive line playing, what that's going to look like. But I mean, I'm taking running back like 40 here. So there's going to be question marks about anybody who I take. I think that he is the highest upside.
Matt, just some general observations. Anything over the past couple of rounds here interesting to you as we get done with we're in the 8th round here now, I believe. 8th.
Yeah, I mean, so just some overall observations. Thor taking Shedeur Sanders there in the 7th round is somewhat interesting to me. I mean, he does have a chance to possibly be really good. From a CFF's perspective, we like Sean Lewis, the offensive coordinator there for Colorado. So he could put up some really good points. But Something that has really stood out to me, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't really realize it until Chris Moxley said something. I'm really worried about Mike, and I'm sorry I don't know his last name, picking out of the number 1 spot. All he has is Caleb Williams as his quarterback, and as Moxley pointed out, his bye week is in week 13 of championship week, so now you have no quarterback for your championship week, and I think you should obviously always be playing that you're going to make it into the championship. And I mean, now he takes Grayson McCall as I'm saying that, but still, even with that, you're looking at now you're leaning on Grayson McCall as your QB1 and possibly championship week. That to me is a little bit scary. There's a lot of quarterbacks that have gone off the board. I don't really love the players that are sitting on the board right now at the quarterback position. So to me, if I was his team, I probably would have tacked that a little bit earlier, maybe taking that over Hilaire and McCray, getting another quarterback, especially with Caleb Williams not being able to play. And it's not like the Scott Fishbowl for anybody who plays in that. You don't get the average points in the bye week because it's in the playoffs. He's missing week 13 for you.
Yeah, McCall has that new, Jamie Chadwell, their former head coach, is gone now. He's with Liberty, so we don't even know exactly what Grayson McCall will be this year. I've actually been actively avoiding him in drafts this year. Still kind of like the receivers, the weapons there, or at least Sam Pinckney. But I'm a little worried about him overall. All right, so we do have a new guest joining us here in just a couple of minutes. But before we get there, Chris, I do want to ask you real quick about LeQuint Allen, who actually fell a little further. I didn't realize he was still on the board. He went in the 6th round, the 4th pick overall of that round. Talking about players that are replacing other players who have been prolific, moved on to the NFL. Sean Tucker was the Syracuse running back the past few years, and if not for what supposedly is a heart condition of some kind, probably would have been drafted fairly early by the NFL. But Tucker is out. Allen is in. And although there was some sort of a off-field issue, it has been resolved completely. He will be there for week 1. That was a really far drop for him, the 6th round. Is that where you typically see him go, or would you have expected him to go a little earlier than that?
He was in my queue around that spot as well. So I think you got good value. I think a lot of what you're doing with Allen, though, is you're projecting what we saw in that bowl game. And in that bowl game, he went 15 for 94 and 11 for 60 receiving.
11 catches.
11 catches in the game. In the rest of the year, he had, I think, 5 catches. He was okay last year. I don't know what to expect from him. I thought Sean Tucker was just a really good player overall. So it's kind of hard to project someone sliding right into that role. But it's a really good value, I think, where you get him, considering the upside that comes with that position, because the offense isn't going to change a whole lot. Robert Anae, who was our offense coordinator last year, moves on to North Carolina State, but the guy who steps in is has been with Robert Anae for years and years and years. Will run a very similar system, and that's probably one that's going to feature the running back and relies heavily on play action. I think you're going to see a similar Syracuse offense, so that's only good news for LeQuint Allen.
Another tight end went off the board here, David Martin Robinson at Temple. I think people would be surprised to learn that there's a tight end at Temple that is intriguing for fantasy purposes for us. I don't know, Chris, I mean, we're getting close to your pick here. Do you have some thoughts on where you've got some guys at every position here now at this point? You've got a tight end that you can rely on. You've got a couple of running backs, a couple of, or only one receiver, I guess, is maybe you're not worried about it?
No, I think receiver depth is really, really nice right now.
He gave me a look, man, when I said that.
Sorry, I'm just looking at my queue and I'm like, there's like 8 receivers that I would feel fine taking here. So I mean, that just tells me I'm going to wait probably 1 or 2 more rounds. I'd like to shore up the running back position still, depending on who's available at my pick.
Interesting.
So that'd be my target, or maybe target tight end again. Because they seem to be going a little bit more.
Another one off the board here, CJ Dupree, the Alabama guy, transferring in this offseason. So yeah, I mean, that queue has to be getting thin at tight end overall.
Yeah, it is. A couple guys, but man, you're taking some risk here.
I do just want to.
So I want to.
No, please go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to ask both of you guys a question really quick. So now we're sitting at the point where we're in the 9th round. John Lobb just made his pick a minute ago. He is now the only team with 1 quarterback. does that worry you?
Yes.
If Chris, I mean, you exactly right. It has to. I mean, how I just talked about it with Mike's team, and we don't even really like Grayson McCall. And he, in my opinion, he probably needed to take him or take another quarterback sooner than that. But now you're sitting here going in the 10th round. You got a long way to wait to get back to 10-15 for John here. And he still is not taking another quarterback. I mean, Sam Hartman, actually, that's a good pick by Britt, especially if he does it does even close to what he was able to do at Wake Forest. Like, I think John needs to go quarterback here soon in the next round, maybe even double up on his next turn around here, 10-15 and whatever that is, 11-4.
Yeah, it's getting thin, and you're getting players with legit question marks at this point. I think JJ McCarthy's probably going to go off the board by then. I wouldn't be surprised if Tanner Mordecai at Wisconsin and the Dairy Raid goes off. So just a lot of questions. Also some upside though.
All right. Well, we do have another guest about to join us here. So let's welcome Joe DeSalvo. Joe has run the CFF site for years and years and years. Is like when I think of the website to go to for CFF, it's you guys. So Joe, thanks for hopping on here with us and joining us to talk about your team here out of the 6th slot.
Yeah, man. Look, first of all, thanks for all the things that you guys do. I mean, look, it's nice to get a bunch of us now carrying the flag for college fantasy football and to have another platform, and you guys bringing that voice as well. Just makes the game even stronger and, makes the platform even bigger. So thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you, Joe. Yeah. You've also got your co-worker there, Mike Bainbridge, picking as well. So we want to hear you roast his draft, but we want to hear about yours first before we let you do that. Strategically, you've got just one quarterback here. So, I mean, I guess my first question would be, any worry about that? We have been talking about that a little bit lately here.
No, I don't have any worries right now. The one thing that I'm used to is we do best ball formats. We do these redraft traditional formats, right? So the one thing that I always let people know whenever they're sending me DMs, whenever they're sending me emails is, hey, what should I do with the first 3-5 picks? Do I go running back, quarterback? The questions come in all the time. And what I tell guys all the time is that you just every draft is different. You've got to let the draft come to you and let it play out. And that dictates how you draft. When you look at the board, the first 4 picks off the board were all quarterbacks. I wasn't anticipating that. I was looking for Quinshaw Judkins, maybe Marvin Harrison going off in one of those top 4 picks. I like Rasheen Ali. I love that Marshall offense. If he is back 100% healthy, he is going to get a heavy workload. And then in these more traditional redraft formats, you can kind of get some sneaky quarterback play later, right? This isn't a best ball format. You can play the waiver wire if those positional players at the skill positions are there for you. In this format, we're looking at 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and 3 flex positions. That's deep for skill positions. So my philosophy was that I wanted to jump on as many quality running backs and receivers as possible. I don't have a tight end yet. I've got 1 quarterback. I'll let you guys know. Because they're not listening to this right now. I'm looking at, Mason Taylor, Jake Briningstool at tight end. Those 2 guys are still on the board. I'm looking for them to come back to me. And when I look at quarterbacks, there's still a lot of good quarterbacks on the board in this format. When you look at Chandler Rogers at North Texas and what he can do in that Eric Morris offense in this redraft, I think that's a guy that I'd be looking at in the next couple of rounds. And you know what? If he doesn't work out, you draft him and you drop him and you move on. You got Casey Thompson at FAU. Great matchups on that schedule. I think Jeff Sims over at Nebraska could be a matchup. So I'm looking at all the top tier talent is gone. But, man, you look at some guys on that list and you've got the ability to play some matchups along the first few weeks. So that's where I've gone with this draft. Heavy running back, heavy receiver. I really like Brennan Armstrong there at NC State, particularly since they just added Bradley Rosner through the transfer portal. I feel good with the way the draft's going right now. And there goes Mason Taylor as I say that.
Maybe they were listening. Maybe
they were listening to. I mean, hey, I do like your start, Joe. I mean, Rasheen Ali, Rodney Hammond, Marquise Crosby, Richard Reese, Jalen Knight. That's a loaded running back room. And then obviously Xavier Worthy, who probably most people know, but then Jared Bradley, who arguably had the best year for the Texas Tech wide receiver room, which I wasn't expecting. And then adding a guy like Ashton Hawkins, who a lot of people may not know from Texas State, who's also a very good wide receiver. So it's a very good group you have of the skill players. I don't want to knock you there at all. That is really impressive.
Well, what I like to do in these type of drafts, remember, we're 18, 19 teams deep. So by the time the draft gets back to you, there's no such thing as reaching in college fantasy football drafts. You either love a guy and go get him, or he may not make it back to you. That's why I have no problem drafting a Marquise Crosby early. I really like him this year. Craig Williams is no longer there, who we thought was going to transfer there from Baylor. He's got the backfield to himself. Last year as a true freshman, he had a tremendous year. Jalen Knighton, I mentioned this earlier. Bainbridge did a good job of really stacking. I was looking at Preston Stone, and Mike sniped me before he came back. That SMU schedule looks so good right now that really in these redraft format leagues where you're playing head-to-head formats, it's more about those weekly head-to-head matchups, and you take the schedule heavily into account as opposed to playing best ball when you really just want the safety and security of guys that you know are going to start every week.
Joe, you've been running the CFF site for a while now. You guys are a very established brand in the CFF space. We asked John Lobb this question earlier as well, but just how have things kind of changed over the past few years as the whole format gets a little more popular?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on where we're going and what we're going to do with college fantasy football. So I'll end there. First of all, let me just kind of give you the lay of the land. I've been having the website now since 2011, right? And so what I will tell you is that the way the site built and our brand is that we wanted to be there for the casuals. A lot of guys love college fantasy football. They bring friends in, and the trouble is the attrition rate, right? It's sometimes that full FBS or college football is just overwhelming. Because let's be honest, I use this example all the time. My wife can play NFL fantasy football, right? Because Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and the Drew Brees, they're there every year for 15 years. Everyone knows those guys. What makes college fantasy so challenging is what makes it so great for a lot of us is that there's a lot of turnover in names, a lot of learning, and there's 130 plus teams in FBS. We established the site because we wanted to be the safety net for guys that had leagues that needed help to kind of keep guys within their league so they had a resource to go to. The one thing that I will definitely say to you guys is that our following at the CFF site, we try to give as much one-on-one attention as we possibly can because the retention rate year after year is really what keeps us going, is really what fuels the fire in our belly. We slowly but surely get more guys in every year, and that's a great thing for the college fantasy football platform. Big picture, 5 years out, 7 years out, where do you think we're going? And here's my thoughts on this, being in the space for so long. I do think that there's a chance for college fantasy football to really take that steep growth pattern up, that sharp upward trajectory. I think it may come, and we're getting into that space right now. If we get to the point where these mega conferences, or we build mega conferences and the haves sort of separate from the haves nots, for as much as I love the 130 plus team full FBS format, if we get to the point where these conferences really start breaking away and the number of the teams start dwindling down a little bit and we go to like maybe 75, it becomes a lot more manageable for people. And I think we may see more casuals move into the college fantasy football space. Now, what a lot of them don't know, and I think we need to do a better job of promoting, is that you can go ahead and customize your conferences, right? You can go ahead and scale it down and do 1 or 2 conferences. A lot of people don't really know that, and we've got to get people over to Fantrax to really promote that, bring it in, and have them start off maybe on a smaller scale and then get them hooked that way. Because what everyone will tell you is that, man, once when you get people into the college fantasy football game, they usually stick. All my friends back in the days, NFL, and then we started fantasy, college fantasy. And the one thing that they always told me is that after doing college fantasy for 3-4 years, man, if I had to do one or the other, I would do college fantasy. And that's just the way that some people take to it, because I use this example all the time. The one thing that makes college fantasy great is that every Saturday we're hoping we've got that guy to run for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Look, in NFL fantasy, 100 yards at a touchdown is a great week. We're looking for that 40, 50-yard performance on a weekly basis, and that's what makes college fantasy football so exciting week in and week out. You've got so many windows of games. You got games at 11, 1, 2 all day long. Man, who doesn't love a Saturday playing college fantasy football and watching it, right?
100% agree. And you are on the clock here, so we don't want to.
I got it covered, man. John Paul Richardson. That's one of my guys for TCU. I'm going with him. Great. I love taking guys that have good springs with a quarterback and have that rapport. I love taking those guys. We don't have any news confirmation that there's anybody that's had a better spring than John Paul Richardson. We know that Kendall Briles' offense sometimes can feature a wide receiver one, and that guy had a great spring. I love the rapport he established with Chandler Morris in the spring. I'm going to take a flyer on John Paul Richardson right there.
I love it. I love it. Last question before we get you out of here, Joe, and thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time here. We need you to say something mean about Mike Bainbridge's team live on air. That's really what we need out of you, and then we'll let you go.
I wish I could. The only thing, and I'm not looking at Mike, is I'm wondering if he's going hat or no hat, right? Like, and the only way to really get Mike, spiraling is you don't talk about his team. What you need to do is you just talk about Michigan, right? So, or you talk about Ohio State, and you really hype up the Buckeyes. You want to get Mike tilting a little bit. Talk about his Wolverines, or talk about how they can't compete in the college football playoff when they get there. That's how you get Mike tilted. But no, man, love the guy. Bringing Mike into the CFF site was the best thing I've ever done. Mike's been around forever. He and I just have tremendous chemistry. And look, that fire is in our belly for college fantasy football. That's why we've been around for so long. As you could hear the passion, I love the college fantasy football game. Anytime you guys want to have me on to do something, all you got to do is give me a shout. Give me a text. Give me an email. I love being the flag bearer for college fantasy football, and I couldn't thank you guys enough for what you guys are doing right now and for having me on and allowing me to come in here and just kind of talk what we love to do.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. We are definitely going to be taking you up on that offer. And yeah, as someone who's been a customer for 3-4 years now over at CFF site, definitely not going to stop that anytime soon. Joe DeSalvo, thank you at the CFF site. Just a ton of, great information, both grand scale and then, weekly micro basis. So thank you for joining us here, and good luck on the rest of your draft here.
Austin, Chris, Matt, thanks again, man. See you guys soon.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. Later,
All right,
Joe.
thanks, Joe.
That is one thing about the college fantasy space. Just everybody is really, really passionate about what they're talking about. I mean, we've seen it with everybody on here so far. Froton, John, him, just all these guys. They really are flag bearers for the format. So where do we want to go from here, guys? What are we looking at in terms of the draft? We're on the 11th round, just kicked off. We're getting a little bit of a receiver run here. Anything stand out to you, Mr. Bruening?
Not really. I mean, I like the pick there of Malik Benson. I think that was by Cam. Obviously, he has a chance to be the guy at Alabama. We still have some questions about what that offense could look like. Tommy Rees coming over from Notre Dame, being the new offensive coordinator. We still don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It's going to be a fun thing to watch this fall. So I was a little surprised we did not see Chris Moxley, flipping out when Colston and Loveland went to Ben there in the 10th round. I really thought that was the guy that Mox would make sure to have on his team. So no, outside of that though, it's been intriguing to watch. It's been some very good picks. I think Trevor Etienne going in the last round too.
Yeah, love that.
It could be really good for Florida.
Chris, you took while we were gone, or while we were chatting with Joe there, you took Cameron Scatabo, running back at ASU, and then Javon Harvey at Old Dominion. I think most even pretty diehard college football fans would struggle to name you a single player on Old Dominion with Zach Kuntz and Ollie Jennings now gone. What do you like about Harvey here?
Yeah, so Ollie Jennings, who was their wide receiver one last year, transferred to Virginia Tech, and Old Dominion hired the coach that led the most productive FCS offense last year in Kevin Decker at Fordham. 609 passing yards per game, just incredible production from this offense. And it's actually quite similar to what Tennessee ran, which is a offshoot of like the Baylor system. Stretch the field with your wide receivers, like make the quarterback read one half. And I think if you want to put Harvey into a certain role or category, I think he's Jalen Hyatt of this offense. Now the quarterback play is not there, but it wasn't really there last year under Hayden Wolf. So I would really think Javon Harvey can step in and be a really productive receiver for this offense. So he's a really interesting player, and a lot of that's coming from the hire of Kevin Decker at offense coordinator. So,
well, speaking of moving up to the FCS level, or FCS to FBS level, that's what Scatabo is doing this year as well. The running back there for Arizona State. He was with Stanford's now head coach. Was his coach last year there. They were a very productive offense. Scatabo, probably not really an NFL guy if you're a big fan of the draft. He's not an amazing athlete, but he is a big guy. He's over 210, 215 pounds, can catch the ball, and is a very experienced running back in his own right.
Yeah, I like him. Yeah. He's definitely a name to keep an eye on for people who are probably unfamiliar with him. I mean, he's a new name, but he had an awesome spring with Arizona State. And I love the Kenny Dillingham hire, who led Oregon last year on offense. I think it's a really good situation for a running back to be in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually love that pick by Chris. I mean, a lot of people in not just the CFF community, draft community, love Marquise Bucky Irving and what he did at Oregon last year. Would not be surprised if Cameron Scatabo is not able to replicate that with Arizona State, with Kenny Dillingham coming over there.
Yeah. All right, Chris, we are going to go to break here, but I do want to get your pick in before we do that. You are on the clock.
So I want to crowdsource this to y'all real quick.
Wow.
Here's what I'm deciding between. Michael Matheson, the wide receiver 2 at Western Kentucky. We know that offense could be productive and support multiple options. I am also considering Reggie Brown, the wide receiver at James Madison. Chris Thornton is gone, and he was the wide receiver 2 there last year. Incredibly productive offense. A couple questions about quarterback. And I'm also considering Malachi Jones, the wide receiver at Tulsa, who is stepping into an offense that should be productive again with Braylon Braxton, and everybody who was in that room last year is gone. So Reggie Brown, Malachi Jones, Michael Matheson. Where are we leaning, guys?
Go ahead, Matt. He's got 54 seconds.
One, two, three, and name it. One, two,
Mike
three.
Matheson.
I'd go Brown. Oh, dang it. Okay.
We tried.
All right, I was leaning Matheson, so I'm going to go with him. But
that's cool. I got it. You respect Austin more.
That was a test, Chris. Yeah, you just really upset Matt and hurt his feelings here. Yeah,
that's okay.
I won't be back after the break. It's going to.
It was that wide receiver run got me good though, because I really wanted to get one of Daniel George or Ryan O'Keefe, and Mike Bainbridge took both.
That pesky Mike Bainbridge again. All right, we are going to go to break here for a couple minutes. When we come back, we still have a few more guests. We have another hour here to wrap up the show. See how many rounds we can get through. But again, this is the 2023 FSGA draft on Bettor Sports Network. We will see you guys on the other side of the break.
College Fantasy Football Draft, hosted by Campus to Canton on Bettor Sports Network.
So let's get into some best ball philosophy here.
Yeah.
In your experience, going back many, many, many years, drafting in national tournaments, Bradley, have you historically been shying away from the running back position in favor of wide receivers? In favor of, if you're drafting in the FFPC tight end premium format, in favor of tight ends as well. Is that the smart play when you're drafting this early in the drafting season?
Yeah, so taking value is going to be huge, and looking at like running backs and wide receivers, like you want to take a look at how the structure is. So you mentioned earlier the FFPC has a couple different types, like they've got super flex and one quarterback, and so that's going to change your strategy a little bit if you have only 2 wide receivers or if you're drafting 3 wide receivers. And of course, the PPR is a different aspect compared to other formats or other tournaments. And so keeping in mind the pass catching upside of some of the running backs may be more valuable in those formats. So the Austin Ecklers, the Christian McCaffreys may be more value because they get more receptions, and so I loved taking late shots a couple years ago on like the JD McKissicks of the world, who would get 50 receptions really cheaply. So that's something to consider. But when it comes to like overall value, like you're drafting, you're in the middle of a draft, and you just notice that, I don't know, maybe it's Chris Godwin has fallen 14 spots, but Chris Godwin was not in your plans to be drafting. Like maybe you don't have a strong player take on Chris Godwin, or my take is that I don't think the Bucs are going to be particularly good this year. But for him to be dropping, let's say 14 spots is more than a full round. And based on the data that we've seen, if you get to draft a player more than 12 spots ahead or behind ADP, so they drop 12 or more spots, you have an 84% edge over the rest of the tournament players who are drafting this player, because typically this player isn't going to drop. The average draft position is a really strong indicator of where a player is going to go, and I think that is also on the flip side. If you are reaching too much, you're giving up value in your drafts. And so when it comes to value-based drafting, you need to consider, just because this guy is in my plans or I don't have a strong player take on him, maybe that's your opportunity to sprinkle in some shares of this player at a good price.
This is the FSGA College Fantasy Football Draft on Bettor Sports Network. Hosted by Campus to Canton, featuring Matt Bruening, Chris Moxley, and Austin Nace.
All right, welcome back for our third and final hour of coverage of the FSGA 2023 CFF Draft. If you want to follow along with this draft, you can see all the rosters at Bettor Network on Twitter. You can watch the entire draft on the Bettor Sports Network YouTube channel or at bettorsports.com. And if you've just been so charmed by the three of us that you need to hear more about us, you can catch our show on this network every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Or, of course, you can check out the Campus to Canton YouTube page or podcast networks. We do something pretty much every day, the three of us, or in some combination over in those places. We do have a new guest joining us here in just a moment, but we are, just to remind folks where we are in the draft here, working our way through. We are over a third of the way through the draft now. My eyesight, man, I tell you what, I'm 31, but it's going here. We on the 13th round or 14th round? Where are we at?
We're on the
12th round. Okay. It's
You're
not
close.
as quite as easy to guess how many rows we've gone down now anymore here. But here is the draft board. When we left, Chris made that Michael Matheson pick. We talked about Western Kentucky. I thought Matheson would have been off the board already, actually. Austin Reed, his quarterback, went second overall, and then Malachi Corley, the projected wide receiver, one there, went at pick 7 to Mr. Froton, who we had on earlier. But Matheson, I mean, first off, he has his own value, but if something happens to Corley, we're talking wheels up for this guy, right, Chris Moxley?
Yeah, I think so. And I liked getting him like almost 4 full rounds after Dalvin Smith, who went 8-2.
Yeah.
It was hard to ignore the value at that point, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, and Dalvin Smith in this league, so we should bring this up here now. Dalvin Smith in a lot of Fantrax leagues has tight end eligibility, even though he is not a tight end. He's as much of a tight end as I am at this point. This league though is based off true position, so he is not played there. So Smith does hold quite a bit of value if your league lets him play there. He should be the wide receiver 3 or 2. I mean, depending on who you talk to, for Western Kentucky. And that guy last year, David Davis, had about 800 yards and a handful of touchdowns. So very valuable. You can see why that would be so valuable at the tight end position, as we've talked about. Not a position that has a ton of depth. So we are joined here, our next guest, Joe Goodwin, is hopping in here. The next guy from Fantrax, picking out of the 14 spot at JGoody77 on Twitter. Joe, nice to finally meet you. You're actually coming on our show in a couple of weeks, or at least the podcast, but glad to have you on here, get to know you a little bit, and then chat with you about your draft.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm looking forward to, I think it's the end of August. We'll see you guys again. But yeah, this draft, man, it's super big. So, you're always trying to weigh that value of like, can I wait one more round on that guy? And then, so.
Yeah, it is tough. So, Joe, I admittedly don't know much about your background in terms of how long you've been playing, Devy and college fantasy and all those kinds of formats. So why don't you tell us a little bit how long you've been doing this? And, do you have a bunch of CFF leagues?
So I'm definitely newer to CFF than most of the other experts in this league. I've been primarily a NFL guy, and as the development of at first it was Devy. So those Devy leagues started popping up, started getting a lot more interested in the college game, and then in the last, I would say, like 2 years, the campus Canton leagues started really popping up and starting to bridge the college game to the NFL game. So I am newer to this for sure, just straight college, but definitely have been learning a lot, trying to manage those different things. And I'm lucky enough at Fantrax to work with Mr. John Lobb, who he and I have been working a lot together, trying to put out the content. And, what the great thing about my situation is, I get to do a lot of research. So when I write the articles, it's not necessarily just completely opinion based. I'm doing a lot of the research, trying to learn all the nuances, because at the end of the day, I think my number one priority in this space, I'm not going to come off like an expert that guys have been playing this for 10, 15 years, but I'm trying to bring a new audience to the game. So I'm definitely writing a lot of articles that are geared towards people who are newer to this space and are learning it and help run through what I'm trying to write about, which is, that my very first article on Fantrax was the College Football 101 article, which was sort of like a step-by-step of here are the first couple of things you should be looking at. So, I'm definitely excited to keep getting more and more involved in the game and working with the people in this space that have been here forever. So it's been really exciting.
I love that. And if you listen to Joe DeSalvo on here before, he thinks that we'll be getting a lot of new beginners here over the next few years. So definitely a need for that content. Well, if you're looking at your draft here, Joe, you're picking out of the 14 spot. You took Frank Harris there in the first round, waited a little bit then on your next couple quarterbacks, but got some really good ones there. I mean, walk us through kind of what your strategy was coming in, and if you think it's gone to plan, or do we crumble up that paper and start shooting from the hip pretty early?
No, actually, for the most part, things have gone relatively well. I've only been sniped like 1 or 2 times. Zachary Franklin was one. I was really hoping he would get to me right, and he went in the round that he went in. I was queued up. And the other one, who is one of my favorites, and Jared talked about, is Ashton Genty from Boise State. I really prioritized getting Taylor Green first, and I was hoping that, in those next rounds, I was able to grab Genty. But I didn't, and that's okay. My one thing, in the live draft, I think I'm the last person who was not with a tight end. And that's sort of become a little of a playful thing. And everybody kept saying, okay, well, there has to be some sleepers. Quite honestly, through a lot of the research, to be a good tight end in college doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good college fantasy football tight end, because their volume might not be there. So I had a couple guys targeted. I did grab one because playing that game of chicken, I didn't want to lose, because technically right now he's not listed as a tight end on Fantrax, excuse me, which is Sanat from Kansas State. And last year he converted to tight end and became a fan of Howard's. I think those last couple of games, he was his number one target. So, I sort of lucked out that he's not listed as a tight end yet, but he definitely will be listed as a tight end before the season starts. So I kind of waited on tight end. I really just wanted to hammer running back and wide receiver as much as I could, and trying to get guys I feel like have a lot of upside. So I think, grabbing Katron Allen as late as I did, I feel like people are so in love with Nick Singleton, and they don't realize that Allen is really just as productive in that offense. So I was really excited about that pick.
Yeah, and if something happens to Singleton, obviously you've got a bell cow at Penn State in that offense that likes to really run the ball here. Well, Joe, I mean, we have had a couple others that are either brand new to this space or really haven't been playing a ton of CFF. So for anybody listening or watching that is intrigued by the format, do you have a piece of advice that you would give out to just kind of for beginners? And you've been writing the articles. I'm sure you've thought about a lot of this.
Well, one of the things I always hammer is draft teams and offenses that are just scoring a lot of points, and that doesn't always mean like the teams that are on TV. So like when you watch those 13-10 Iowa versus Michigan State games, although those might be the games that are on TV, they're not necessarily like robust with college fantasy football stars. So one of the things I would say to people is, look for offenses that are high flying, and then just grab guys that you're interested in watching. And out west, the Pac-12, or however many teams are there now, is a great league to hammer, just because there's just so many high scoring games. Them and the Big 12, are just fantastic resources. So for newer players, it's grab guys that you want to watch, because the more you watch, you might watch, one of your first games of the season, you could be watching a team like Oregon or UCLA or USC, and you're like, oh, wow, these are great teams. But then all of a sudden, their opponent could be like, Texas, San Antonio, could be Coastal Carolina, could be Tulane. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, wow, that Michael Pratt guy is really good. And then that's how they'll start to develop that. Because, the NFL, there's so much coverage of it, like the marquee names. Whereas in college fantasy football, there's a lot of names in that space that you're not going to learn them all right away. I don't know them all right away. I'm still doing research and learning them and getting better at who might the second or the third receiver be for Western Kentucky, because that offense is just electric. So learning all those things is kind of like, okay, we're going to get there, and it takes time. And that's what I would tell people. Don't get frustrated, and when you're playing, have fun. Enjoy the games. That's what it's all about. And, don't do like a huge money one if you're not sure. Find a $5 best ball, start there, draft guys you're really interested in or teams you like, and then go from there. Start to develop your repertoire of schools and names, and eventually you'll get there. It's exciting. Like I said, I've only started I'm really in my second full year of playing college fantasy football. So, last year was definitely a lot of learning. And when I, like I said, talked with John Lobb about, working with Frantrax, he was just like, hey, would you want to jump into this space with me? And, all bets were off after that. I was like, hey, it was awesome to learn about it. So, it's fantastic. And I'm super excited that this space is going to grow 100%. It's going to be to bridge all of those hardcore fantasy football people from the NFL to start getting them to realize that this exists in college. So now all of a sudden you're making it a full weekend. Saturdays and Sundays are going to be full of football for them. So it's really exciting to be not at the ground floor, but we're definitely ascending.
I love it. And John, definitely a great steward for everything here. We're joined again at Joe Goodwin at JGoody77 on Twitter. One final question for you, Joe, and then we're going to get you out of here. I want your biggest sleeper for this year, college football 2023, that's really going to blow up. Who do you like?
Biggest sleeper. I've been doing a bunch of articles with sleeper players, and that's sort of like an interesting topic because you're asking for just one. I'm going to go as deep as are you guys okay if I go super deep on this?
We would prefer it, quite frankly.
Yes. Better.
You guys are all like, yes. So in doing a lot of research, I was figuring things out on who I was really like starting to get excited about after spring, because when you look at a lot of the spring stuff, almost every team will release information, and that information will all just be pretty positive for the most part. And when I was going through all this different stuff, I actually came across this name that I was like, whoa. And he's from Boise State. and I'm trying to like make sure I don't say his name incorrectly because I don't want to butcher it.
Is it the true freshman? By the way, you're on the clock, Joe. We don't want you to be.
Oh gosh.
We don't want you to not get your pick in. But is it the true freshman from Boise State that you're talking about?
Yes, sir. It is my true freshman from Boise State. Sorry about that. Like I said, I didn't want to mispronounce his name.
It's Prince Strahan. I'm not sure exactly.
I thought it was Strawn because isn't his brother Strawn?
It's his
What's
brother.
name again? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was amazing because when I started looking, it was almost like they talked about how Boise State's returning a lot of good receivers, but during the spraining, it was this guy is jumping off the page, and it was almost like this guy's going to play and nobody expected him to. And I'm just like super excited about that because those are the kinds of guy that like I want to go watch. I want to watch a guy that like, and the other name that keeps popping up that a lot of people like, he's on a really good offense. So I'll just give you the two sleepers. The other one's A.D. Mitchell from Texas. He is quietly like, okay, they've got Xavier Worthy, they are going to be like, they got Jonte Cook, who's like, everybody's going crazy as the rookie. But A.D. Mitchell is going to be really, really hard to cover. And I think he's going to get a lot of volume. So he's another one I love. So, those two guys are just absolutely amazing. And I'm like super excited. As like you had said, the super sleepers, if you will. But it's super exciting. It's a brand new game. And I am just like learning on the fly a little bit, but at the same time, like loving every minute of it because it's just opening a whole new world. So that way, when my NFL stuff kicks in, I'm always like, oh, I know that guy. So it's very, very exciting. And I appreciate you guys being such stewards of this game. You guys are bringing a lot of people to it. So I appreciate everything you guys do as well.
Well, thank you, Joey. We appreciate that. Checks in the mail for that. Thank you for hopping on here with us. Again, Joe Goodwin at jgoody77, working over at Fantrax here. Good luck on the rest of your draft, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Excited to do a show with you.
Sounds great, guys. See you then.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, Chris. While we were there, your Brown fell back to you. So there you go, Matt. He took both. He listened to both of us.
Nah, but he listened to you first, and that's all that matters. I'll never forget that.
Matt's gonna sulk down in the bottom here for the rest of the show. Man, what a bummer. And then you took Jared Brown as your other pick there, Chris. Is that what I'm looking at here? Wide receiver.
Yeah, I've actually come around on him a lot. And think that he could actually lead this offense. I've drafted him and Tim Pinkney at a bunch of places, but I mean, Joe was just on. He had drafted Pinkney earlier, and Brown kept falling, so was a player that I wanted to draft. I just drafted like 4 straight dudes from the Sun Belt. So,
Sun Belt, Fun Belt, baby.
Let's go.
3 straight. I guess Western Kentucky's out now, but yeah. One thing I wanted to actually touch on real quick was how many players I'm taking, and I think a lot of like heavy college fantasy analysts are taking that are group of 5 players. So conferences that you probably won't watch on a yearly basis.
How many G5 guys? I mean, the bulk of your team actually is, Chris, really. I mean, I'm looking at, Daquan Finn, Samson Evans, Wigless, Bryn, Jermaine Brown, Rob. I mean,
9 out of 13.
BYU is technically Big 12 now. That is the one alignment one that I can never remember. BYU. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, I have 9 out of 13. When you get to Maction and you get to out of conference, that in conference play for the defenses that rank like 120th or worse, when we look at like power ratings, those are the games that are like 50-50 at the end, and that's what wins you college championships. Like the MAC and the group of 5 is really what brings you home the championships. You largely get there.
Why is that?
Just bad defense.
Defense, yeah.
Just bad.
They're just like the quality of defense is not up to par, and these teams are fairly evenly matched, all things considered. So I think you have a lot of teams who know each other well, know the weaknesses of each other, run kind of specific systems, and then they get their best player the ball, and the best player who gets the ball is generally like way better than the other team. So I'm thinking like Lou Nichols 2 years ago, Central Michigan ran for like almost 2,000 yards. and won like a bunch of titles for college fantasy players because he was the best player on the field in the MAC, and he had a MAC schedule. Like those. So I like targeting group of 5 teams to win championships. I think you get there on the back of your Power 5 players, though, when they're playing the out-of-conference games.
I was going to say, I mean, they start the season out of conference, and so you get Ohio State versus Eastern Michigan or whoever, and that's a mismatch. But as you get into conference toward the end of the year, Ohio State's not playing Eastern Michigan anymore; they're playing Michigan.
Yeah, man.
So
Western Kentucky this year. They play Ohio State in another big Power 5 school early on in the schedule, but then later on in the year they're going to get easier opponents. I mean, it's the easiest way to equate it if you're an NFL fan. It's like the Kansas City Chiefs playing, I don't know who another really good offense is in the NFL.
Bengals.
The Bengals every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night because except they're playing like the Browns defense. It's bad. Like, and they're all going to their best players on offense. You're scoring 50-50 games. It's absolutely amazing. It's fun to watch personally if you're a college football fan, and that's how you win at the end of your season. So end of October, early November, when they switch over to their in-conference games, it's a lot of fun to watch.
You're going to get hate mail, but you're a Browns fan, so you're not.
I've lived
ragging
it for 30
on them.
years.
Yes,
they're bad guys. Denzel Ward's the truth, though. But enough NFL talk.
All right. Yeah, that's all the NFL you'll get out of us in any given year. All right. We do have our penultimate guest here. Cam Mellor is about to hop on with us. Cam works with PFN and CFN. That is you guys are about a year into the college football network stuff. How has that been going, Cam? And pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's 7 months old on July 21st because we made the right decision to launch on signing day last year. So what a welcome to the world that was. I'd be remiss if I said we didn't know that was the plan, but no, it's been going well. Really excited to sort of sink our teeth into a full season of just college football. I don't think there's very many people in the world that get to watch Group of 5 and watch them action for a living, but that's what I do. So you had me at action just now.
Lucky man. You're a lucky man.
Yeah, exactly. We've had your compatriot Joe Broback on some of our shows before, and I know that he dabbles in a little bit of college fantasy. Have you played college fantasy before, Cam, or is this first league for you? Or we've had a mix on here so far today.
It's been a little bit of both. I think I've done a few where I've done mini best ball drafts. So yes, technically, this is the first league that I think we'll keep up with. I was in a few a couple years ago and multiple, I guess, dynasty leagues too here and there. So no, this will be the first one I think everybody's actually interested in and going to stay on board for. It's been more so the hit and miss. When you would sign up and do like an MLB draft, fantasy draft in March, and you're excited for some sports to be back, and then by April you've forgotten about it. That's been the extent of my full league experience. Always fun to draft. Always really fun to talk about the players that we watch so much, and then I watch all off season long with other people that know what they're talking about. So it's always refreshing, always fun.
Well, with some experience, then you've been picking out of the 3 slot here so far. I actually do want to ask you. I want to ask you about your whole team, but I want to lead off. You started with Jordan Travis at 3, at the 103. That was our first kind of surprise as a group. We were a little shocked. Obviously, he was going to make it back to you, so if you wanted him, you had to snag him there. Are you a Jordan Travis Heisman guy, or what are we looking at here?
I was an Austin Reed or bust at 3, and so at that point I was playing with house money. So I was hopeful that Reed slipped. I didn't think it would happen, but yeah, you can see behind me. I went to Florida State. I made Travis Truther. I think he's actually the better quarterback overall, the better athlete than Drake May. In the ACC, I have him. I did the quarterback rankings 1 through 133, and Travis is number 2. So to me, I figured it'd be a reach for these purposes, but I really think what we saw in November and then ultimately into December against Oklahoma last year is what we're going to get from him all season long this year. I didn't construct the roster. It's sort of fallen this way, but I didn't construct it Power 5 heavy. But of course, when you have your 3rd overall pick as your quarterback as a Power 5, I guess I technically started that way. But no, I'm a Travis believer in the sense that I think what we saw in November, another year in the same system, they've built around him. The offensive line has gotten better every season. I think what we saw last year at the end of the year is what we see all year for him.
Go ahead,
Matt.
Being a Florida State fan, I have to ask, because we are big fans of Keon Coleman here. Are you excited about him joining that wide receiver core? Chris Moxley and myself both believe they have a shot to win the ACC this year. So we really like Florida State. I think adding a guy like Keon Coleman is only great for Jordan Travis.
Yeah, and it opens up the rest of the offense for everything else underneath, right? So you would put Coleman and Wilson outside. And honestly, I don't know any ACC DB room that goes any close to their size and strength and speed. So overall, yes, Coleman, the addition. Wilson was already good enough on the outside to sort of make some favorable matchups. But if you look at like a guy like Winston Wright, who we haven't seen from in 2 years, his best football after the unfortunate injury in the transfer, he is slated to start in the slot. Ja'Kai Douglas and honestly, Kenton Poitier, throw them all out there, and everybody's going to have a hard time figuring this team out. Not to mention, Jaheim Bell and Morlock. So to me, the wealth of options that they have, Coleman is just an added bonus for Travis to exploit.
Very selfish question for you. We like some of the freshman wide receivers going in there. I know they have a lot of other names, and you just listed the majority of them. Any chance that we see Hakeem Williams or Vantravius Jacobs at all this year on the field, or even Destin Hill, who we have been waiting for seems like forever at this point now?
If we do, we see him earlier. We see him right before the Florida game and the non-con game with the out of conference game, right? So I from what I heard in camp is that Hakeem was taking a little bit to adjust to the speed. So I think there's just too many mouths to feed, right? In the era of the transfer portal, though, you have to. So yes, I think we see them in some capacity, maybe not as much. And I think they understand that Coleman goes to the NFL next year, Wilson goes, Winston Wright's got his eligibility gone. So next year, that is the room that you can sort of take hold. I don't think we see them as much as maybe their profiles indicated we might have early on.
I love it. Let's touch on the rest of your roster here so far. We've talked about it, actually, a bunch of the other players you've taken and how much we like them. Guys like Joshua Cephas at UTSA, Luke McCaffrey at Rice. Alt McCaskill, I think, is an interesting one. A Colorado there, transferred in from Houston, missed last year with a knee injury. I mean, just kind of talk about some of the players you've taken so far, what you were thinking as you selected them, and maybe is there a pick that you'd like back, or kind of walk us through everything that you've got going on here so far?
I think I watched McCaskill sort of go down or up higher up on my board from other running backs I had. And I think I got a little gun shy. So McCaskill's probably a little early just because of the unknown. I tried to go with we know they're going to see volume. We know we're going to see them on the field. And so McCaskill's maybe the only one right now that I'm thinking I look back at. And so it's sort of like, hey, what was I thinking? I maybe could have found someone else there. But I think with his high level play, if he's back to full health, who knows what we see at Colorado this year on offense, obviously with Shedeur and how much Travis Hunter plays. But to me, he's a sure thing if he's healthy. He's one of the top running backs in the country. And so other than that, again, the sure thing. Cephas with the Corey Clark banged up and no Zachary Franklin. He's the de facto number one, in my opinion, in that awesome offense. Badger with the Kenny Dillingham effect out there too. I know we have some quarterback discrepancies at Arizona State, but yeah, the same thing. McCaffrey with Rossner gone now as well. McCaffrey is the de facto number one. We know that he's going to be the matchup. So once they get, I think, to their conference games for the group of five schools, like you guys were talking about, I think there's going to be a sort of a discrepancy that we see these top talented guys. So I was actually surprised with how far Kamani Vidal fell, the 1,000-yard rusher, right? And the guy who actually is featured. And then Edward Sadie, I mentioned it in the chat, actually, when we were picking. You check down Sadie. I think EJ Warner is close to being that guy that can test all levels of the field for Temple. But until he gets fully there, Sadie is a great option out of the backfield. Almost 40 catches last year. So this league being a half-point PPR, it's Sadie was sort of the guy for me to go to.
Well, you actually just got up on the clock here, so we get you for a live selection as well. So walk us through what you're thinking right now as you make this pick.
I need some running backs. I think I need depth just in case. And so I identified two guys that I was interested in. I'm not too worried about my non-tight end because I don't think anybody's going to grab Welch from Wyoming or Cardenas from UTSA at this point. So I'm actually going to grab Stewart from Toledo. I think somebody who we know is going to be the number one there for them going forward. So we'll grab Stewart.
Love it. Adding to that running back room. All right, Cam, before we get you out of here, I just want to ask, I mean, you're obviously over PFN and CFN. What do you guys have planned for leading up to the season here and then in season in terms of content? I know you've been doing a lot of the positional countdowns and things like that, but what's upcoming for you?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun actually. Just literally planned our calendar for the entire month of August up until
Boom.
August 26th. So actually, Oliver Hodgkinson and myself will be in, or Ollie will be in Ireland, and I think right now I'm actually going to make a surprise visit to Ollie. So Ollie, if you're watching this, be prepared to meet me in Dublin, Ireland, and we'll tour the Guinness factory. But facility, no, other than that, we're actually going to hit the betting realm really hard this year in terms of betting preview. We saw a lot of success with everything last year from the betting angles. And so other than that, covering all 133 teams, I think no one does it well. No one does it in depthly, and no one does it to the level that we're going to be able to do it. And so to me, all 133 teams are going to get their shine. And we're going to continue to tell the beyond the helmet stories, the humans. They're not just 12 guys we see 12 Saturdays, every fall. There's so much more that goes into it. So a lot of our feature interviews with athletes across the board. We got Tennessee, Virginia Tech coming up this week. So a lot more of that content in the betting realm.
I love it. We'll be on the lookout for those Sam Houston State articles. That's
hey, we did interview Casey Keeler there, so we got that out there.
There we go.
I might have Ife on my draft board here as well to grab as he slides down. So
love it. All right, well, Cam, thank you for giving us so much of your time here. I know you're a busy guy. You can find Cam Mellor at Cam Mellor on Twitter, and all of your work over at Pro Football Network and College Football Network. Good luck with the rest of your draft here, and good luck with the league. Hopefully, like you said, this one lasts the whole way through, and the optimism and the interest maintains throughout the year.
Yeah, you throw the money down, and it hopefully keeps everybody's interest. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for doing this whole process here. So appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks, Cam.
Yep.
All right, guys. And then there was one guest remaining, and that's actually Jared Palmgren representing Fantasy Alarm. But as we said at the top of the show, he is the head of our college fantasy department at campus2canton.com. So we get to have him on. We'll get to roast him gently as he joins us. We're starting to get into some deeper names. If you are not a diehard sicko degenerate, you might not recognize a lot of these names. So Matt, anybody in these last couple of rounds stand out to you as a player that you really should be watching more of this year because they're a good player at just not getting the national recognition?
I mean, you had to mention good player. I was going to go, we don't know what Jawar Jordan's going to be at Louisville, but he's a guy that I think is very intriguing. A guy we talked a lot about actually last night on our YouTube channel, Logan Diggs, who could be the lead running back at LSU. Probably a name that not a lot of people know. You'll get to know him this year as LSU is going to be in a lot of primetime games and in a lot of big games. Dante Moore by Joe, which I thought was a very intriguing pick. True freshman. It doesn't seem like he's going to start the year at UCLA, but obviously having a Chip Kelly quarterback is like having a Kyle Shanahan quarterback. If you're talking about the NFL side, like it's a quarterback you want. If he starts playing, it's going to be a very intriguing selection. I mean, I just have to mention this one. Eric Froton drafting Jackson Dart. Man, this dude's after my heart. I love this guy's draft. I know that Moxley can't stand Jackson Dart, but Jackson Dart, Kyle McCord, he's just killing it. He's absolutely killing it. Loving his draft. But yeah, another interesting one is Gibson, the Oklahoma wide receiver. I don't know. He was a guy that we liked last year. We thought he might be good. Obviously ended up being year 1-0. Didn't really do a whole lot. I'd be very intrigued to see if he does anything in the Oklahoma offense. Obviously at this point, you're just kind of grabbing guys who maybe have some upside. So I thought that was an intriguing pick as well. And then Drew Allard, Thor Nystrom, who just went off the board. Obviously, Felix Sharp, one of our cohorts over at Campus Canton, thinks he could be the best quarterback in the Big Ten this year. I don't know how much that translates to fantasy. I do think if head coach James Franklin of the Penn State Nittany Lions allows this offense to open up, he could end up having a very, very good fantasy season.
Matt, we're going to dub this round your round because Gavin Sawchuk just went as well.
No, and Jeff Sims, who I've been to. This is, you guys are, thank you guys. After Chris Moxley shamed me a round and a half ago by taking Austin's guy, you guys were listening. You've come back and taken all of my guys, and I appreciate it.
I mean, maybe it's telling that your hashtag guys are all getting taken in the 15th round. I don't know. I don't know. But
they're going to win you leagues. I'll say it that way. I can't say shoot from deep because someone else says that, so.
Yeah, that's been trademarked already. Chris, you just selected and you took Marlon Gunn, running back at ECU, Eastern Carolina. I love the pick. What are your thoughts on him?
I didn't realize he was still available, or I would have probably taken him like 2 or 3 rounds ago.
He falls in every league that I'm in. Like, I think people just forget about him.
So do you want to know why? Because when you open Fantrax, it sorts by rank, and he has no stats. It's like he just doesn't show up. You have to scroll. He's ranked like 3,000 something, and so I have a feeling that's why he fell, because that's why I didn't notice him.
Wow, so you just took the 3,000th player on the board? What a loser.
Yeah. But I really like Marlon Gunn. He steps into a role that's vacated by Keaton Mitchell. Different player, but I think a really good running back, especially at his level, in the AAC. That conference is going to be a little bit worse this year. Some of the top powers transferred out, like Cincinnati. But there's a lot of opportunity here for him to have a really big role. And he was really efficient as a freshman, averaged over 6.5 yards per carry. Solid player, I think, can do some damage this year and moving forward.
For people not familiar with our offerings over at Campus to Canton, we do full recruiting rankings for the offensive skill positions with analysis from a college fantasy and a future NFL draft Devy standpoint. Marlon Gunn last year was my highest rated running back that went to the G5, the group of 5. So a back that I agree. I think he's quite talented. I think he's a good player. And we'll see if ECU is not a total dumpster fire this year, which is definitely possible. I think he could have a nice year there for them. We're starting to see a couple of freshmen come off the board. And Matt, I want to ask you, because you mentioned Dante Moore earlier. Carnell Tate just came off the board. Actually, it looks like he's a freshman wide receiver at Ohio State. I mean, talk to us a little bit about some of the freshmen that maybe you think could go here. And then I actually want to ask Chris if he's considering any over the next couple of rounds.
I mean, Tate's obviously an interesting pick there. He has the chance to be the backup for Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, we've seen over the past couple of years, Ryan Day is not really like hockey line shift his wide receivers like he used to. Maybe that's because he's had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka for the past 2 years, who are absolute studs. A wide receiver that I would probably, I don't know that I'd take him ahead of Carnell Tate, but one that I would probably take in this draft, and Joe Goodwin actually mentioned him earlier when he was talking about AD Mitchell, Jonte Cook, who I think is a guy who probably should be taken at some point. Isaiah Nayor is more of a possession catch guy, coming back from a pretty serious knee injury last year. Jonte Cook, I think, just brings a different dynamic to that offense. Talk a lot about USC. We want these offenses, right? You want the Lincoln Riley offense. Zachariah Branch, who got a lot of love in spring for what he was doing. I think that room is, for the most part, kind of wide open. Dorian Singer transfers in. Mario Williams hasn't quite lived up to the hype. I think that Zachariah Branch could be a really intriguing player there. Those are probably two. We saw actually Cedric Baxter go earlier, went ahead of Jonathan Brooks, who, as it comes out right now, looks like Brooks is going to be the starter. But Cedric Baxter, we've seen Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of Texas, always has a 1,000-yard rusher. I think Baxter could be that for them. So those are probably the top names that I'm looking at. I can't really think of anybody else off the top of my head. I mean, Justice Haynes, I don't know that you want him. Ruben Owens is probably the last one for me, actually. Texas A&M running back who has a chance. I don't think that running back room is anything special. Ruben Owens could have a chance to really take over for Jimbo Fisher there in the Aggies.
Chris, are you considering any freshmen? You don't have to list them if you don't want to, but what do you think?
I'll list them. I'll list them. I'll be honest. I've been trying to be as honest as possible. I think Zachariah Branch is the number one freshman target that I have. I just think there's a potential that he steps into a somewhat significant role down the stretch for USC, and I mean that's a really valuable position to be in. I don't think we're quite deep enough yet to consider it, but I think JJ Cole at Iowa State's going to start some games this year. The news just dropped, which is like the worst kept secret in sports, that Hunter Deckers is potentially being suspended or like permanently suspended. I don't know what the
it's permanently banned is the rumors that are coming out right now.
So
betting on games.
Without speculating too much, if he's permanently banned, was he betting on Iowa State games?
That's the report that came out.
Oh.
He was not only betting on football, but betting on Iowa State.
No.
So
Not great.
So there's a reason that a lot of Iowa State players have not gone in this draft, and it's one of the worst kept secrets in college football. But now that it's out there, I think JJ Cole is a player who's kind of interesting. I don't know that I think this league is deep enough to draft him, but a name to know who will probably start as a freshman quarterback at some point this year for sure.
All right. Well, I do want to bring our final guest on here, Jared Palmgren, at CFF_Jared, I believe, on Twitter. Look at me, just having that memorized. Jared is representing Fantasy Alarm, as we have mentioned a few times, but he's really with us. We're
I'm representing both.
If he wins, he represents us. If you lose horribly, Jared, we will denounce you. You are not a part of campus.
That's totally fair.
Okay, cool. You're on the clock, so I want to let's hear your thought process as you make this pick, and then we can talk about so far your team and some other college fantasy topics.
So I took the Chris Moxley approach to this draft, thinking that there's 18 teams, and tight end was going to dry up so quickly if I didn't try to attack it early. So I took a Rondé Gadsden. We're now 15 rounds later. I haven't taken another tight end, so I'm going to take a high upside guy here. I'll take Dallin Holker out of Colorado State.
You almost made my heart stop depending on who you were going to take there.
I was also considering Mason Fairchild as well, but he has a bye week of week 8 as well. So I would have just had 2 tight ends with a bye week of week 8, and that would have made no sense.
There you go, Jared, watching the bye weeks. And we did just see Ruben Owens go, by the way, for anybody who was watching that Matt just mentioned, that freshman running back at Texas A&M. Jared, my first question is, how dare you? Orlando Gadsden over Brock Bowers. We need you to turn in all of your Georgia gear, and anything that you have. You are no longer allowed to keep that.
I have a very set rule for fantasy this year when it comes to those two. In a best ball, I'm taking Bowers over Gadsden every time. In a redraft, I'm taking Gadsden over Bowers.
Why?
I think Gadsden, I think, is going to be more consistent week to week. I don't think he has the ceiling that Bowers has on a week-to-week basis. Like, Bowers has that potential to haul in 30 fantasy points for you, versus Gadsden, I think, is going to be a solid, 12 to 18 fantasy points every single week. And with Bowers, yes, he can get you those 30-point weeks, but he can also give you those 6 to 7 point weeks as well. So I think Gadsden is the guy I'm going to be more concerned about having a redraft, because I'm not concerned about when I have to start him.
That's as good of an answer as any, I think. We'll let you keep your Georgia gear for now. I know you're a big Jace McClellan fan. You got him in the 3rd round.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
very happy about that.
Nice selection there. Tell us a little bit about why you like Jace McClellan, the apparent next guy up at Alabama.
I think the only reason why people aren't taking him even higher is because it is just a loaded running back room. But Bama's going to have to run the ball a ton this year. Have you seen their 3 quarterback options between Buckner, Milroe, and Simpson? It sounds like none of them are really being trusted to pass the ball like we've seen Bama do the last several years. They bring in Tommy Rees, who is very used to working with quarterbacks that can't really pass the ball too well. And so what did they do last year? They ran the ball a ton. And Jace McClellan's going to be right there at the front of it. I know Jam Miller. I know Justin Haynes. Those guys are all exciting. McClellan's waited his turn. He could have gone to the NFL last year. He did not. He's back for another year. The coaching staff trusts him. He is a back that can do it all. He's pretty decent catching it out of the backfield as well. He'll be Bama's number 1 running back for this year. I love that as my number 1 running back for my team.
Talk me through the rest of your roster. You waited on quarterback. You have that kind of anchor tight end, as we've been calling it on our show, and then you selected the next one live on air here. So what are we working with here? 16 or so rounds in.
I'll be real. I got lucky with the quarterback because the quarterbacks are coming off the board earlier in this draft that I'm kind of used to in a lot of the leagues I've been doing. Part of that is just the people we're drafting with. A lot of these guys are, they're fantasy experts, but they're also not as familiar with the college player pool as some of the other people here. So they went and tackled the quarterback a little bit earlier than a lot of people I've seen in other drafts. Other part of it is that it's 18 teams. So, quarterback does dry up at one point. So you want to make sure you have those top tier guys. I got lucky getting Gabriel there in the 5th round. I was sweating the entire time after I took, who did I take in the 4th round? Was it Thrash, I think? Or was it?
Yeah, it was Thrash. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I took Thrash in the 4th round. Couldn't pass that one up, but I was sweating how many picks was that? 32 picks until it came back to me.
Yeah.
Waiting for Gabriel to make it back to me.
Yeah, I mean, and then you Darren Granger is your next guy. Darren Granger, friend of the show. I think that worked out for you. You got two pretty good quarterbacks.
Yeah, I did. I got two dual threat guys. Now that's not as much of an advantage given the fact that this is a 6-point passing touchdown league compared to, your typical 4. But at the same time, like, it's always great to just kind of load up on dual threat guys. You're going to be in high scoring games. I have 3 quarterbacks out of the Big 12 on my roster right now between Gabriel, Howard, and Jones. And then, Granger finished as the QB 19 last year, and he's getting drafted as like the QB like 35 to 40. Makes really no sense to me, considering that there's not a ton that they lose that they can't replace this upcoming year. And the Sun Belt's still going to be the Sun Belt. I think he's going to be just fine.
Jared, I want to ask you now just about what you have planned for this upcoming season from a CFF content perspective. You host Chasing the Natty.
Yes, sir.
Which is a college fantasy football podcast, as I believe the very nice deep voice tells us at the beginning of the show.
Yes, sir.
You do that twice a week once the season rolls around, because there's just so much stuff to talk about. So just talk to us a little bit about Chasing the Natty.
Yeah, again, once the season gets here, we're going to split the show into 2 a week. Again, it's just so much to cover between trying to cover what happened the previous week, what's going to happen this next upcoming week. That, again, it just makes more sense to split into 2 shows. It also allows me to kind of split up who we bring on for those shows. It kind of helps us kind of settle in on who's going to focus on the upcoming week versus who's going to focus on waivers the next upcoming week. It's a great time. Again, Mox did it with me last year. He helped me do all of the sit starts. That's one of the things that we do that I think kind of separates us from any fantasy show, let alone any college fantasy show, at least during the season, is that every sit start situation that we discuss during the season comes from people on Twitter sending us their sit start situations. So it's like actual decisions people have to make during the season, which makes it way more interesting than if Mox and I were just sitting around and being like, oh, what's kind of maybe an interesting discussion here.
Follow-up question. What should the punishment be for somebody who says sit start instead of start sit?
I believe I just said sit start, so
Yeah,
I think
many times. Yes,
I don't want to make that too harsh on me over here.
No, you.
What was the preferred method for the Spanish Inquisition? Because I think we should go with that. Quartering.
John and quartered.
Whatever we got to do. All right, Jared. Anything else that you just want to cover here before we let you go? We've had a ton of great CFF folks and some that are newer to the format here. You're someone obviously experienced. So maybe give us a piece of advice first, and then we'll give you final thoughts before we get you out of here.
Yeah, again, a lot of you are who are hopping into CFF this year. I really do recommend wherever you can do it, try to get into a mock draft or a low staked best ball league wherever you can. If you're on Twitter, especially, I know guys who are running them all the time, especially as we're getting closer to the season. It really is the best way to kind of get yourself familiar with the player pool, kind of see where the value of certain guys are going off the board. And then the other piece of advice I would tell you is really make sure you understand the rules of your league. A lot of times you can catch others napping who are used to playing in a certain type of league format. And that's where you can start to get your advantage compared to everybody else. Like say you hop into a league, other people don't know it's a 2 tight end premium league. When you go Gadsden at 1.5, some people might be looking at you sideways, but you understand how powerful that is compared to everything else. Or if it's a 6-point passing touchdown league, just like Mike did in this draft, you go Austin Reed 2nd overall, you understand why that's so powerful. So I think that's kind of the two. Again, it's not really specific to college fantasy, but it is what I would say the best advice I can give people.
Yeah, definitely with the different settings, and we've been trying to highlight that a little bit as we've gone on here with the show. All right, any parting shot, any final words from you, Jared, before we bid you farewell?
I just really want to take a second to shout out Eric Froton. I'm sure other people have on here as well, but like, dude, people don't realize like behind the scenes how hard he has worked to put this league together with the FSGA. Like he has been like in backroom meetings. He has been like planning this for months, putting this all together. Like dude is an absolute saint. putting all this together. I couldn't be prouder of him, and I'm honored to have been invited to a league like this. I would never have thought I'd be here just, 2.5 years ago when I started doing all this. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, Jared. Well, thank you so much for hopping on here with us. Obviously, we really enjoy working with you over at Campus to Canton. We'll be talking with you soon, I'm sure. So, good luck with the rest of this draft, and good luck with the season at large.
Appreciate it, Austin. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Jared.
you, Jared.
And that is Jared Palmgren at CFF_Jared. Well, we are bringing this home. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in, for checking in on this entire draft here. We are getting toward the end. Chris, you took another tight end that you love while we were live here with Jared. So I commented on it in our little chat here. Harold Fannin, Bowling Green. So you have an Old Dominion guy, you have a Bowling Green guy, you have James Madison guy. Like, I mean, what are we doing here, Chris?
I'm trying to corner the Conference USA and Sun Belt fantasy options, because this year actually Conference USA is playing during the week as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I want to be able to watch my guys during the week. But Harold Fann's a player that was a true freshman last year. He scored 4 rushing touchdowns as a tight end. Pretty dynamic. I think he's a really good receiver. He would have had a bigger role if Christian Williams, or why am I blanking on his name? Christian Sims was not there, and he was a really productive tight end and had been for a few years. Scott Leffler tight ends are actually, who's the head coach at Bowling Green, have been super productive for the last handful of seasons. So this is a player at a position that I want to target and has always really been fairly productive.
I'm glad you clarified that he was the head coach of Bowling Green, because nobody knew who you were talking about there.
Love that guy.
Of course. Yeah. He's amazing.
I think that's my neighbor. Yeah. So just want to give you guys a heads up that the link to the full draft board is going to be in the YouTube description. So if you're looking for the board after the fact, maybe you do want to hop into a league and you want a board to reference when you do that, you can go over there and check that out, because we're not going to be doing all of the rounds. Obviously, this is a 30-round draft. We're on round 17 here, I believe. So I'm not going to get there till the end. Chris, you were just on the clock, and I do just want to check in with you real quick. You took Frank Peasant, Middle Tennessee State. Dude, just stop with the CUSA stuff over here, man. Come on, pick a real school. Come on.
I mean, he had some really big blow up games last year. He had games of 20.3, 32.5, 38.6. Like, the ceiling is here when they play pretty bad teams, generally speaking. So, and he's involved in the receiving game. It's not like super involved in the receiving game, and plus it's a half, PPR. But Peston's a player that I've been targeting in a lot of drafts, and I think I'd prefer him to a lot of the backs that went in the last round. And I needed a running back a lot, and I hadn't taken one since Gunn, and before that I'd waited a while too. So maybe next time around I will go to a different conference.
Maybe, he says, maybe. You do still have those 3 quarterbacks, Chris. And it seems at this point, I'm just trying to quickly browse the list. It looks like a lot of people have 4+ now. There's a couple people still with 2 or 3. No, Matt?
No. Oh, yeah, my bad. I thought you were saying everybody. Now there's still one team with only 2.
Yeah, there's a few teams. But I mean, are you worried about getting kind of a 4th guy to round out your team? Or what are you thinking here in terms of quarterback depth as a whole for college fantasy football?
Yeah. There are a couple options I actually still really like out there. I believe in the Clay Millen bounce back. Garrett Green at West Virginia is an interesting name. Brett Gabbert, who didn't play at all at Miami of Ohio. So I think there's good options for a 4th guy they're still on the board. And going with 3 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds, I think I've been afforded that luxury of being able to wait on that 4th guy and have him be that type of player versus someone's 3rd guy who has a lot more questions. So that was kind of the strategy that played into the strategy of going, quarterback heavy early, especially in this type of format. But yeah, I mean, I probably would have taken Braylon Braxton. We had Joe on earlier, and he, at the time, I think he had one quarterback. We were talking about it, and I think Braxton was a really nice pick there by him to super high upside.
And just to highlight what to highlight what Joe did, as we talked about, he only had that one quarterback, but since then he's taken Diego Pavia out of New Mexico State, and then Dante Moore, we mentioned earlier, the true freshman who probably starts at least a couple games for UCLA this year. Chandler Rogers, it was a name that he actually mentioned at North Texas, and then Braylon Braxton, who you mentioned there at Tulsa. So he has rounded out that QB room just like he promised us he would. So that's good. We don't want broken promises here on this show. Mr. Bruening.
Yep.
Your guy, Gabe Ervin.
I see. I was, is it that who just went right there?
I believe that's who just went.
Okay. I just dropped I was actually going to bring up the fact I'm surprised he has not gone, but Anthony Grant went at the beginning of this round. Again, we've talked a lot about the spring reports on this show over the past 2 hours. Gabe Ervin's gotten a lot of love in the spring reports, and Nebraska's actually already started their fall camp. He's getting a lot of love of being the first guy there in Nebraska. So the fact that he went after Anthony Grant is a little bit surprising to me. You want, at least in my opinion, the starting running back in a Matt Rule offense. Don't let the NFL sour your opinion on Matt Rule. He is a great, great college coach. So I think Gabe Ervin's got a shot to be really good. Getting him at the end of the 17th round, it's pretty good value in my opinion.
Speaking of running backs who, maybe the starter was drafted as the understudy here. We mentioned Carson Steele earlier. He went in round 4. We did get TJ Harden, who went in the 10th round. That's a huge gap between those two backs. I mean, that too rich for you guys, Matt?
Carson Steele is definitely. I mean, I know I get why Britt. I get why she took him and talking about what he did at Ball State.
She did not get him. She wanted him and bought him.
Oh, sorry, that's right. Yes. Yeah. So, but I get what she was talking about. We talked about how great he was at Ball State, but again, it seems like TJ Harden's going to be the guy. So to get him, what was that, 6 rounds after Carson Steele went? I mean, give me that value on Harden all day long. I would love to take that pick.
Some other just, players that are replacing guys who were pretty good last year. I do just want to ask you guys, Izzy Abanaconda was massive for Pitt last year in the starting role for my Panthers. I'll say it. I am wearing a WVU jersey or shirt today just because it's really freaking comfy and it's from Home Field Apparel. Rodney Hammond is supposed to be the next guy stepping in here, and he probably plays a healthy amount of snaps last year too if he hadn't gotten injured. So do we believe in Rodney Hammond, who I believe went in the 3rd round in this draft?
You tell me. You're the pick guy.
I believe. I think he looks great. Is that the round? Is that the range you see him going in, Chris? I think I expect 1,000 yards out of him.
Actually, he was on my short list of players. I'm not sure I would have taken over Samson Evans, but he was right there, the guys that I was considering. I mean, Pat Narduzzi wants to do one thing, and that is not pass the football.
That's the ball. Yeah. All he wants to do is run the ball. Yeah. Yeah, I think not only was it a great pick by Joe, I'm with you on that, Austin. I mean, he was, as you mentioned, the starter over Izzy before he got injured. I would not be surprised if he doesn't produce what Izzy did, if not maybe a little bit better. I mean, it's obviously hard. What did Izzy have? Like 300 plus yards in one game and 5 touchdowns?
Didn't he have like 20
I don't know
touchdowns?
that he has.
Well, he broke that single game record or whatever for yardage. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we are getting toward the end of our time with you guys. Thank you for spending a couple hours here with us to catch up on this first inaugural 2023 FSGA College Fantasy Draft. You can catch us Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern here on Bettor Sports Network. Check out all the other shows that are going to be on here. We will see you guys later this week. We're looking forward to it. Thank you guys again for joining here with us.
Yeah. Froton killed the draft.
You just got all your guys.